Chapter 165. What would happen to concubine Huan in the future could almost be predicted. She probably never thought of such an ending, right? She touched her belly that was already more than 4 months pregnant. This might be her last hope, but at this moment, she still couldn't help but feel panic in her heart. The old madam had handed her over to Mrs. Liu to deal with. She had no power, and no one. In the future, she was afraid that she would be completely trapped in the house. Only in this way could she ensure that she would keep her mouth shut. Whether this child could be born or not, it was all up to Mrs. Liu. She had long heard that the old madam didn't like concubines. The concubines of each branch basically didn't have a chance to show their faces in front of her. This time, she really experienced it unforgettable. Not to mention, some concubines flattered the old madam and then suppressed the mistress. In the Luo family's backyard, it was simply a dream. Even if the old madam didn't like her daughter-in-law, it was absolutely not their turn to step on the legal wife and mistress. In this regard, old Madame Luo was definitely the best mother-in-law. Mrs. Liu seemed to have seen through her thoughts. "Don't worry, I won't do anything to you. After all, without you, what should ye do? I don't know if you think so, but you must have thought so before. Naturally, I will fulfill your infatuation. I won't touch the piece of meat in your belly, but I don't think you will like others to serve him. You have to take care of him and the child." Mrs. Liu sighed with pity. "So, you must take good care of yourself." Concubine Huan's heart was even colder. This was Mrs. Liu's real purpose. At this moment, Concubine Huan even had the idea of letting Luo Rongping die quickly. But she couldn't. If he died, she would probably be buried with him. Although her birth had eliminated the possibility of her being the legal wife, she thought that with her talent, beauty, and skills, it was easy to firmly control a man's heart. Even if she wasn't the legal wife, she could still get whatever she wanted. No one dared to look down on her. Before today, she also thought that she was living such a life, but it turned out that it wasn't. No matter how fiercely she fought with Mrs. Liu, in fact, the Luo family didn't take her seriously. If they really wanted to deal with her, the man she relied on would absolutely not be able to stop them. Before, it was Mrs. Liu who made the old madam unhappy and didn't want to help her. Did she hate her? Of course, she hated her. But who should she hate? The old madam? Mrs. Liu? Her man? Or should he blame the heavens for being unfair? Madame Liu took one last look at Concubine Huan, who was pretending to be calm on the surface, but in fact, her heart was close to collapse. Madame Liu also felt that she was so stupid in the past. She clearly had a mother-in-law who stood on the side of her daughter-in-law in this aspect, but she had to court death and make her unhappy. Otherwise, no matter how Luo Rongping was, there would never be so many foxes in this backyard. She glanced at the bedroom behind her and saw the man lying unconscious on the bed through the wall. Even if he wasn't dead, he wouldn't be able to get up. This source of trouble had been completely cut off. In the future, she wouldn't have to be so tired anymore. After the initial pleasure, her heart calmed down again. Luo Peishan and old Madame Luo, as well as their sons, each went to their own place to think. Whether it was a good night's sleep or a sleepless night's sleep, they didn't mention it for the time being. After Qin Tianming went to the yamen, he had already gone to the gate of Jin Xin Wang's mansion to ask for forgiveness. In the end, he was a first-rank military governor. Li Hanyuan didn't do anything to him. He just let him kneel for 2 hours. There were few people coming and going in front of the gate of Jin Xin Wang's mansion, but it wasn't that there weren't any. Therefore, Qin Tianming's matter was estimated to be known by everyone. However, Qin Tianming was a miserable person. This apology was just for outsiders to see. The real apology would be at night. Li Hanyuan didn't say much. He just pulled him to the martial arts field, and the two of them practiced. In terms of martial arts, there was probably no one who could win against Li Hanyuan in a one-on-one fight. He was a battlefield. He had been baptized by blood for a few years. If one wanted to fight with him, one would only die faster. Therefore, the result of the practice was that Qin Tianming was beaten down again and again. His whole body was covered with invisible scars. However, there were no injuries to his muscles or bones. It wouldn't affect his daily life. But at this moment, it was very painful, very painful. When Qin Tianming curled up on the ground and couldn't get up again, Li Honyuan stopped and squatted down. Do you know your mistake? Master, this subordinate knows his mistake. The way he addressed him was his good attitude at this time. What did you do wrong? You didn't teach your daughter well. You didn't teach your son well. Qin Tianming, third Miss Luo, is your future mistress. The only one. She and I are one. We will live and die together. Li Hongyuan's tone wasn't heavy, but the weight of his words set off huge waves in Qin Tianming's heart. Right now, he only felt that his master was really benevolent. His daughter had been so offended, but she didn't lose a single hair. As for the rest of them, they were only injured. They weren't crippled or killed. This wasn't a great kindness. Master, don't worry. This matter will not happen again. Otherwise, this subordinate will personally end that evil girl. You don't need me to teach you what to do with your son-in-law, do you? Master, please don't worry. Okay, get out. Li Honyuan got up and left unhurriedly. His figure soon disappeared into the darkness. After a while, Qin Tianming slowly got up. He gritted his teeth and endured the pain. Li Honyuan returned to the study. How is Luo romping? Master, 20% is dead, 80% is paralyzed. Li Honyuan didn't ask again. Starting tomorrow, send some seasonal fruits to Wan every day. Master, don't worry. This servant will remember. As for the Luo family, there was no bad news from the third branch tonight. It could be considered a blessing in the misfortune. There was no morning court today, so the morning roll call at the Yamen could be slightly delayed. Luo Peishan went to the third branch to see Luo romping. From the imperial physician who came to check on the situation from time to time all night, he learned that his third son's life was saved. Luo Peishan breathed a sigh of relief. Although this bastard was disobedient and stubborn, he thought that he deserved it. Although he looked incomparably cold on the surface, his heart was still somewhat soft-hearted. Now that things were like this, no one would dislike him and want to punish him or even kill him as an example to others. The Luo family would also not be implicated by him. When Jingwan paid her respects to old Madame Luo, she heard the exact news. In fact, everyone, including the others, had the same thoughts as Luo Peishan. Of course, in fact, most people didn't know the specific situation and only thought that Luo romping had an accident. Although this matter could only be treated as an accident because Luo romping was still alive, it didn't mean that Luo Peishan's expression was good. It was unknown whether other people knew about this matter, but almost all the people in the Ministry of Personnel knew. When they saw Luo Peishan's gloomy face, they didn't dare to breathe loudly. When they saw him, they hurriedly left after greeting him. As for those who saw him from afar, they directly took a detour, afraid that they would bump into him. This selflessness and iron blood were equally famous. If he caught a person's weakness, even if they didn't die, they would be skinned alive. Prince Rui originally wanted to take this opportunity to comfort Luo Peishan. However, he thought that this old fox would not be so easily deceived. Perhaps he had already suspected him at this time. It was time to go up. If things went wrong, he might think that he was showing off. His previous efforts had failed to soften his attitude, and now it might backfire. Therefore, after a slight hesitation, Prince Rui chose to leave. He didn't know that after he turned around, Luo Peishan's piercing gaze was full of coldness. On the surface, it was indeed treated as an accident, but it didn't mean that he really didn't care at all. That was his son. Even if he was in the wrong, could this group of people wantonly decide his life and death? Before this, it was impossible for him to work for him. After touching his son, they still continued to have such thoughts? Did they really think that he, Luo Peishan, was made of clay? Not long after, Lu Qingdi summoned him. Luo Peishan tidied his clothes and entered the palace with a solemn expression. Lu Qingdi said that he had also just heard the unfortunate news and was grieving. "How is your son?" he asked with concern. "Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. My son's life is not in danger. It's just that." Luo Peishan's indifferent face flashed with a touch of sorrow. "It's just that I'm afraid that in the future he will be entangled in bed and won't be able to get up again." Lu Qingdi sighed. Luo Peishan, even if he didn't smile normally, was full of a scholarly aura and didn't make people feel that he was cold. However, today he was emitting an aura of strangers don't come near. It could be seen that perhaps he was really in extreme pain. However, beloved official Luo, how did your son get into this accident? Have you investigated clearly? I'm also confused about this matter. If someone did something, just tell me. I will definitely seek justice for you. Why do you say that, Your Majesty? Luo Peishan was slightly puzzled. My son was an accident. Speaking of it, it's also his fate. If he really wanted to seek justice for him, he should directly hand this matter over to the Supreme Court for a thorough investigation. It could be seen that this matter was really what the Emperor in front of him wanted to see. However, there was no other way. He was the Emperor, and he was the subject. As the saying goes, if the Emperor wants the subject to die, the subject has to die. It was easy to deal with other people, but the Emperor couldn't find a way to settle accounts with him. Moreover, he wasn't the real culprit. He didn't even add fuel to the fire. He just didn't do anything after knowing that the matter wasn't simple and then hoped that some people would keep quiet. Lu Qingdi was very satisfied with Luo Peishan's tactfulness. He let people reward Luo Romping with a lot of good medicinal materials and especially allowed the imperial physician to stay in the Luo family for a few more days. On the surface, this matter was covered up like this. Of course, it was only on the surface. At least, Prince Kong was now in a terrible fix. First, he was scolded by the Empress. Although she didn't use a dirty word, her words were all saying that he was an idiot, and a failure. Prince Kong was so angry that his veins were bulging, but he still didn't dare to lose his temper at the Empress. He just explained that he didn't do it. As a result, he was scolded even more miserably by the Empress. If he did it and was caught, at least he was worthy of the name. If he didn't do it and was framed, that was more incompetent and sullen. Speaking of which, Prince Kang's temper was so bad at other times because he was too sullen in front of the Empress. He was bound to get to the bottom of this matter. In addition to wanting to prove himself, he didn't want to take the blame for his sworn enemy. Luo Romping's fence-sitter behavior naturally angered him. Even if he pushed all the blame to Prince Rue and expressed his loyalty to Prince Kong didn't believe him at all. Thus, he wanted to teach him a lesson and punish him as an example to others. He originally planned to make him fall off his horse, but the key point was that he still let people take action. Then, he gathered the relevant people together for a trial. However, the results made him break out in a cold sweat. These people told him with certainty that they did it because they were instructed by him. But they didn't have any evidence. After all, who would leave evidence for such a sinister thing? Jie Yin received the news from him the night before. Because it was consistent with his previous hints, and the number of people they met was also correct, other than Prince Kong and his confidants, no one else should know about it. Thus, he didn't have any suspicions. Then, he stalled for time and aggravated Luo Romping's injury. This was also part of the plan. In this case, how could Prince Kong not feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave? This framing was very thorough, and it also indirectly proved that there was really a big problem around him. Otherwise, how could the enemy carry out his plan so easily without suspicion? In a flash, Prince Kong became a bird startled by the twang of a bow. It seemed that everyone was suspicious, so he became more and more irritable. Originally, when he learned that Luo Peishan treated it as an accident and didn't want to investigate further, as the people involved, they should more or less visit him to express their sincerity. After all, they went back home after the incident, which was very immoral. However, Prince Kong didn't know what was wrong with him. Not only did he not agree to this, but he also brought the matter to Lu Qingdi and asked Lu Qingdi to prove his innocence. In the court, all the civil and military officials were present. Lu Qingdi hinted that this matter was an accident and stopped here, but Prince Kong didn't seem to understand and told him that he was wronged in a tearful voice. Lu Qingdi was so angry that he wanted to strangle him to death. Well, he had proven his innocence, which confirmed that Luo Romping was framed by someone and not an accident. No matter who the culprit was, as the executor, none of the people involved in this matter could escape. Those people were all Prince Kang's people, more or less related to him, and some were even his brothers-in-law. Now, all because of him, they were sent to prison and were trapped like this by the master they were loyal to. He reckoned that Prince Kong would be so angry that he would vomit blood. As for the others, they were afraid that they would have a cold new life. What kind of future would they have if they followed such a person? Even if they risked their lives for him, who knew when he would sell them out? His heart wavered, so he naturally thought about whether he should choose another master. Prince Rue and the others looked at him with vigor. This kind of person, perhaps he didn't need to do anything to be finished. In fact, Prince Rue was still considering whether to let Luo Jingying go home to visit family. But in the end, she was only a concubine. Her status was too low. It should be known that even ordinary concubines didn't have the qualifications to go home to visit family. If a concubine was allowed to go home to visit family, it would definitely be a great honor. Only her man would spoil her to the heavens. However, a mere concubine was too much of an honor. If he dared to set this precedent, he was afraid that the imperial censor's saliva would drown him. After thinking about it, he could only give up. Perhaps he could send a steward to visit the Luo family in the name of Luo Jingying. In the end, Prince Kong only knew that his imperial father believed him and that he didn't do it. As a result, Prince Kong felt refreshed, as if he didn't realize the seriousness of this matter at all. After the morning court, Lu Chengdi flew into a rage and almost overturned the imperial table. He kept calling Prince Kong a fool. Prince Kang's behavior was not only pushing his own people out, but also slapping his father's face. Lu Chengdi, the emperor, regarded it as an accident, but his son unceremoniously tore down his father's face. Sun Yilin was next to him. He lowered his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes, looking more and more cold. He had already seen through it. No matter how ambitious his Aunt Empress was, there was no hope for her to realize it in this life. This drag was so strong that others couldn't pull her back even if they worked together. Duping's mansion was also in a mess. His strong rise had suppressed his elder brother's development, but there was no other way. He was not only fighting for himself, but more importantly, for the future of Duping's mansion and even the Sun family. If he did not do something, he was worried that Duping's mansion and the Sun family would be completely destroyed by a certain king of hell. He had lost his beloved woman and had to bear the fate of his family alone. From time to time, he had to face the intimacy of the Empress. Sun Yilin felt very tired many times. Every time this happened, he would sit in the flowers for half a day, alone and quiet, not wanting to be disturbed by anyone. Prince Kong was called by the Empress again and pointed out the interest to him. But Prince Kong didn't care. There were so many people who were loyal to him, and it didn't matter if there were a few fewer. He was the eldest son of the legal wife, and no one was qualified to compete with him. The Empress waved her hand and let him leave. She didn't even bother to give him a sentimental idiot look. At this moment, the Empress was really thinking about supporting another prince, a prince who would listen to her 100%. But it was a little difficult to choose. It was not suitable for someone too young. The fight for the throne was almost white-hot. By the time the younger one grew up, it would be too late. But there was no one who was qualified for this fight that she could firmly control in her hands. Now she was a little regretful. Why didn't she adopt a prince in the early years to prepare for a rainy day? Her son was actually quite smart when he was young. Even a few years ago, he seemed to be good. Why did he become more and more disabled after experiencing so many things? The Empress rubbed her swollen and painful temples. It was really not easy to change the person now. Perhaps she should prepare for both sides. Previously, she thought that it would be enough to find him an obedient stepwife. Now it seemed that this was not appropriate. There needed to be someone who was close, opinionated, and knew how to talk to him from time to time. It seemed that the Luo family's third young lady was indeed a very suitable candidate. Unfortunately, if she had known this would happen, she would have made a prompt decision to fight with the emperor. Even if she let Luo Peishan continue to be the Minister of Rights, and even if she gave Yilin some compensation, she was now the fiancée of Li Honyuan. It was not a wise decision to fight with him. However, perhaps she could make a fuss about him, bringing bad luck to his wife. There were too many examples before. But now the Emperor and Lady Su were watching the Luo family's third young lady closely. It was not so easy to make a move. Empress Sun narrowed her eyes and thought quietly. At the same time, she was calculating in her heart. If this matter did not succeed, who else would be suitable? In her heart, she searched through all the unmarried young ladies in the capital. As for whether Jingwan would have any thoughts in the future, it was not within the scope of her consideration. After a woman got married, her heart would naturally be loyal to her man. The Empress did not think about whether she herself was loyal to Lu Qingdi. As the victim, Luo Romping of the Luo family naturally knew about this matter at the back of the Luo family. It was Luo Peishan who sent people. Jingwan and Sunny Jia were eating fruits. A certain king of hell sent people to deliver fruits. Since a long time ago, there was an endless stream of fruits every day. Some fruits that were easier to store and transport were naturally sent more, while others were less. Especially when Sunny Jia saw it, she was very surprised. In the past few years, even in the palace, it was extremely rare. This also confirmed what Li Hanyuan had said. Jingwan was silent, and then she decisively hid the fruits. If there was more, she would share some. If there was less, except for a little bit sent to old Madame Luo, she kept all the rest. Her mother did not even have any. There was no way. Her mother could not hide it. Doing this was just to avoid attracting trouble. After all, the palace did not have it, but you ate it every day. What was going on? Even if Jin Wang did not care about people knowing that he brought these things back, the palace was not willing to give them. Wasn't that unfilial? As the beneficiary of the benefits, Jingwan naturally had to help cover it up. Therefore, the Luo family only knew that Jin Wang sent a lot of fruits to Jingwan. Only a few people knew what exactly it was. Sunny Jia couldn't help but tease Jingwan. Sure enough, she was different. Even that king of hell, who had seen countless beauties, was so attentive. She had never heard of any of the previous fiancés receiving this kind of treatment. Eating can't even block your mouth. Jingwan gave her a sidelong glance. Sun Yijia quickly shut her mouth, because she heard Jingwan say that eating more fruits was good for the baby, other than those that were easy to get heaty. She ate a lot. However, for those that were smaller in amount, even if she was hungry, she only ate a little. If she really listened to Wan Mimi and ate all of it, other than the people serving Wan Mimi would be unhappy, the old madam would definitely have thoughts. More importantly, if that king of hell knew, he might skin her alive. She herself was also very strange. Before she found out that she was pregnant, her appetite was bad. After she found out, her appetite gradually became better, although she would still feel nauseous when she smelled some special smells. Those before, it was probably the wrong time. And sister-in-law, you are a special case. Sunny Jiao was surprised at first. Then she understood what Jingwan was saying. Who knows? After all, Jin Wang had his first fiancée at the age of 16. It has been 6 years since then. Who would pay attention to those things? I am a special case. This point is not false. I am definitely the one that he dislikes the most. Regarding this point, Sun Yijia did not particularly care, but wanted to be liked by that king of hell. If he really cared about Wan Mimi and treated Wan Mimi better, perhaps Sun Yijia's opinion of him would be less. That's right, sister-in-law. You should have a mama by your side who specializes in this aspect. Jingwan pointed at Sun Yijia's stomach. But your side seems to be? For a noble lady like her, it was basically standard to have someone like Gong Mama. Even if she did not burn, she would not make a mistake like eating a bad stomach. Sun Yijia paused, then said without care, "Last year in December, she was driven away by my mother. She had a daughter who wanted to climb into my fifth brother's bed. Fifth brother was very angry, so their whole family was angered by my mother." Jingwan laughed. "It's not that I want to say this, but your mother values your fifth brother too much. In the future, she will definitely be incompatible with your fifth sister-in-law. Right now, I'm very glad that I broke off the engagement with your fifth brother, really." Sun Yijia saw that she did not avoid this matter at all. It could be seen that she really did not care. She could not help but sigh for her fifth brother in her heart. What incompatible fire and water. The premise was that there must be such a person. But looking at her fifth brother's state in the short term, it was very difficult. She was even worried that her fifth brother would not be able to walk out of it in this lifetime. That's right, it's good to break it off. Is it better than marrying into Jin Qin Wang Fu? Jingwan teased. Maybe. According to Jin Qin Wang's current attitude, he should not be too cold to you. After you marry, there will be no one above you to suppress you. Even if there are secondary concubines, they will not be able to surpass you. If you want to deal with them, there are many ways. But if you suppress a difficult mother-in-law, you will only be sullen. Sun Yijia lightly said. Therefore, the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law in this ancient era was perhaps even more blood-vomiting than the relationship between the legal wife and the concubine. Not to mention that it was like her previous life, where one wrong move and the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law would fight. Many times, the daughter-in-law would suppress the mother-in-law. Tried here, as a daughter-in-law, if she dared to talk back to the mother-in-law, it would probably cause the sky to fall and the earth to sink. How is your mother? It's just like that. In any case, her actions are not very nimble. All day long, she is making a fuss about fifth brother marrying a wife. Many of uncles' and aunts' family's female cousins have been called over to Ding Guogong Fu. You must know in the past, my mother simply did not like them. You say, how ironic. As for other things, fifth brother will probably let her do as she pleases. Only when it comes to marrying a wife, I estimate that 3 to 5 years is short. There's nothing wrong with being late. Just like in her previous life, it was normal for men to marry in their 30s. Now is indeed not the right time. Young lady, third young madam. Old madam has sent someone over. A servant girl came to report. However, what was more surprising was that the person sent by old Madame Luo was Luo Peishan's personal manservant. Jingwan's heart slightly moved. Is there any new change in third uncle's matter? Thus, that manservant repeated what he had just told old Madame Luo to Jingwan and Sun Yijia. After Jingwan finished listening, she gave a reward and sent that manservant away. She was silent for a moment. Sister-in-law, this cousin of yours is actually an expert in placing righteousness before family. There was simply a hole in his brain. There was a saying, do not fear a godlike opponent, but fear a pig-like teammate. And Prince Kong, as the core figure of the faction, was so deceptive. Even a godlike person could be deceived to death by him. If it happened 2 more times, she was afraid that even the most loyal hardcore would abandon him. What's the point of fighting for the throne? You should just wash his neck clean and wait to be slaughtered. Sun Yijia was speechless for a long time. He really wasn't this stupid before. Pausing, she seemed to have thought of something. Actually, cousin-in-law is a very smart woman. She is wholeheartedly devoted to Prince Kong. Cousin-in-law is seriously ill. It's not that she didn't work too hard. When you get married in the future, I will properly thank Jean Prince. Jingwan understood in a second. Because he messed up your marriage with Jean Prince? Actually, listening to how she addressed Prince Kong and Prince Kong Qin Wang Fei, one could know how she felt about these two people. Sun Yijia nonchalantly maiden and sound. If he can treat you well, I will be even more grateful to him. It wouldn't be a problem to set up a long-life memorial tablet for him. What nonsense are you saying? Jingwan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. As a result, Sun Yijia looked at her very seriously. She really wasn't lying. Jingwan was a little helpless, but her heart was warm and very comfortable. That's right, Wan Mimi. Do you know about Wan Fangfei's situation? Why are you mentioning her for no reason? Jingwan was very displeased with this person. Such an obvious dislike. If there was no problem, then it would be fake. Hula Yang always tell me to learn more from her. Seeing her also suffer in the hands of Jean Prince, I was happy, So, if I could hear news of her misfortune, I would be even happier. You're not this kind of person, so you don't have to discredit yourself like this. Ask Mama, she should know. Usually, she's the one who tells me these things. At this time, Gong Mama wasn't present. Third young mistress. Nubi also knows about this. Nubi will tell you. As Jingwan's maidservants, they definitely had a common enemy with their mistress. Even if they didn't know the reason why Jingwan hated Ruan Fangfei, they were still their common enemy. So if Ruan Fangfei was not good, they would be happy. So, if she wasn't good, they definitely had to pay attention to it. Jingwan looked at the Qingju, who was full of gossipy spirit, and thought it was funny, but she didn't stop her. Because of Sun Yijia's personality, there weren't any lively maidservants by her side. Even when she was young, the little maidservants who serve her were trained to be well-behaved, as if they were carved from the same mold. According to her mother's words, being too lively would lead her astray. When she first found out about the Qingju's nature, she was actually quite surprised. After interacting with her a few more times, she found that this kind of personality wasn't bad. Okay, you say it. If you say it well, you'll be rewarded. Qingju giggled and agreed. Then, she began to narrate the story vividly. It must be said that these past few days, the outside world was abuzz with rumors. First, it was Jean Prince causing a ruckus in the Gong Prince Fu. Then it was Luo romping falling off a horse. Of course, because the latter involved a factional struggle, very few people talked about it openly. However, it spread throughout the entire imperial city. Whether it was in the backyard of a large family or in the marketplace, the topic of conversation was Ruan Fangfei. Compared to Sun Yijia's disfigurement, it was more than 10 times more serious. Therefore, the rumors were all centered around Jean Prince's words. Something about her face being disfigured like a yaksha, suffering from a chronic disease, or that she was actually a stone woman, or even that she wasn't a virgin for a long time. All kinds of malicious guesses were piled on her, with no limit to exaggeration. One person spread it to 10, and 10 people spread it to 100. The initial guesses later became the truth. There were even people who came forward and patted their chest to guarantee that everything was true. And the people who heard it, no matter how outrageous, spread it out again. If Ruan Fangfei dared to appear now, perhaps there wouldn't be a single person within 100 zhang radius. How high she was once praised, how miserably she fell now. Don't talk about Ruan Fangfei. Even the other members of the Ruan family don't dare to go out. It's estimated that other than the Grand Secretary, no one in the Ruan family has not been affected. Even those servants who came out to buy things, if they weren't treated differently, they would be asked if the masters of the Ruan family were really like the rumors. At the beginning, whether it was the masters or the servants of the Ruan family, there was no shortage of fights outside. It seems that after the Grand Secretary spoke, the situation calmed down a little. However, those rumors have become more and more intense, especially those young ladies who are close to her. This servant estimates that in order to distance themselves from her, those people will most likely alienate her. It's that serious? Jingwan was very surprised. It shouldn't be. It's reasonable to say that the original source was Jean Prince, and it was in the Gong Prince Fu, so it shouldn't be this outrageous. At most, it should be in the backyard of a large family. Sun Yijia felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Perhaps someone deliberately fanned the flames and did it on purpose. Jingwan's gaze flashed. She inexplicably thought of that man. It's reasonable to say that he wasn't the kind of person who would do this kind of thing, but on that day, it was indeed him who said those words. It doesn't matter if it is or not. In any case, my mood right now is very good. Who told her to do some bad things to Wan Mimi first? Public opinion can melt gold. Accumulation can destroy bones. This wasn't something to joke about. If the person involved didn't care, the damage might not be too big, but how many people could truly not care? Not to mention the current situation where reputation was greater than the sky. Even in Jingwan's previous life, rumors and slanders could drive people to death. In her previous life, transportation was developed and it was convenient to travel. If one couldn't stay in one place, they could easily change places. But here it wasn't so easy. Thinking of the things that Ruan Fangfei did to her, Jingwan couldn't sympathize at all. However, Jingwan felt that that kind of abnormal species, her ability to withstand pressure, wasn't ordinary. She couldn't possibly be unable to recover from this setback. So much so that when she appeared again, she might become even crazier and harder to deal with. She had to thoroughly beat her into the dust and lose her freedom. She had to struggle in despair, and after struggling, she would find even more despair. Only in this way could she vent her hatred. Wan Mimi, in this way, is it possible for her marriage with Jin Wang to be cancelled? Jingwan stared blankly. If her guess wasn't wrong, if she really liked Jin Wang, the cancellation of the marriage for her would probably be one disaster after another. I don't know. Although her reputation is bad, but in the end, it's His Majesty's decree. Wan Mimi, you say, if the marriage is really cancelled, would it be counted as Jin Wang bringing misfortune to his wife? No matter, a Si Fei is just a concubine. It should be that Jin Wang's fate of bringing misfortune to his wife has expanded. Sun Yijia rejoiced in other people's misfortune, but she didn't know whether it was Jin Wang, Wan Fei, or both. Jingwan rolled her eyes at her. What about me? Is sister-in-law cursing me? How can you be the same as them? You are great master Liao Chen's 8 characters, a match made in heaven. It shows that he can't bring misfortune to you. It's best if he brings misfortune to all the women close to him except for you. Then, he can only have you. Sun Yijia felt that her idea was very wonderful. Then, Wan Mimi could also be a pair for a lifetime. Chapter 166. Motherfucker, who is this silly white sweet? Please return the flower of old age. It was said that pregnancy makes one stupid for 3 years. This child had only been born for a short period of time, and she already became stupid? Hurry and wake up, don't dream ah. Sun Yijia curled her lips. She also knew that she was indulging in fantasy. He kept a courtyard full of beauties. Weren't they all fine and dandy? For Jin Wang to jinx his wife to that extent, it was already very strange. If he really jinxed all the women close to him, then no one would dare to get close to him. She reckoned that even the emperor would suspect that there was a problem with his son. Don't talk about this anymore, it's so boring. Sun Yijia continued to eat. The weather is getting hotter. According to the usual practice, starting next month, the emperor will go to Changde Palace to avoid the summer heat. Grandfather will definitely be named by the emperor to accompany him. Grandmother will most likely also follow, so you can't run away. I don't know if I should go or not. Of course I should go. I heard that pregnancy is very difficult. Naturally, I should do whatever is comfortable. The palace is only so big. It's all for the emperor's concubines and the princes to live in. The other courtyards of the court officials are all built around the palace. The place is naturally much smaller than the residences in the capital. If more people go, I reckon that they won't be able to live in it. Moreover, the other courtyards of each family are close to each other. When you go out, you can see each other. This will cause more troubles. Sun Yijia spoke from experience. In the past, when she wasn't married, she didn't have the patience to deal with them. Now that she was married, she would definitely be in contact with those who were also married. Those who were the same age as her, as well as those who were older by a few years. There were many old acquaintances, so it would definitely be noisy. Jingwan thought about it. It was indeed so. The closer they lived, the more lively it would be. The women in the inner courtyards of large families were originally bored to the extreme. Even if there was nothing, they would still be able to stir up some trouble. The same thing, their mouths would open and close. They would be able to talk about good and bad things. There's me accompanying you. Right now, I'm the same as Jin Wang, belonging to Gue Jianshou. No one can provoke me. For the past 2 days, the Gong Prince hadn't been able to get a good look from his father-in-law, so he was forced to suffer. Because there were other things pressing down on him, he didn't make the headlines. However, Luo Peishan told old Madame Luo about it, and old Madame Luo told Jingwan about it, so Jingwan knew about it clearly. In the end, the reason was Princess Consort Gong, but the root cause was Jingwan. When Jin Wang went to find the Gong Prince, he didn't obediently drink the wine, and even said something that shouldn't have been said. Naturally, the Gong Princess Consort's maternal family and his in-laws took the blame. The left governor's 3 sons were kicked and injured, and he himself knelt in front of Jin Wang Fu for an hour. This kind of thing had never happened to Lu Qingdi before, so it could be considered a loss of face. The main culprit was his own daughter, so the left governor at most let his wife say a few words. The Gong Prince, who didn't handle this matter well, naturally became the left governor's punching bag. But he was a prince, a Duke of Qin. No matter what, the left governor was only a subject, he couldn't do anything substantial, so he just gave a cold face and gave a cold war. Due to his status, the Gong Prince's words and actions would definitely not be subservient. The more the left governor scrupulously abided by his duties as a subject, the further the distance between them got. But he was the person that the Gong Prince relied on the most, so he vomited to death and hated him to death. The so-called clay figurines still had 3 points of temper. Usually, the Gong Princess consort was fine and indulgent, but now her father was giving her such a hard time, so naturally he took his anger out on her. Almost every day, the Gong Princess consort was unreasonable as usual, laying her hands on those beauties. But for the first time, she was reprimanded by the Gong Prince, Vixen, jealous, losing face for him. At that moment, the Gong Princess consort felt that it was inconceivable. She quarreled with the Gong Prince, but in the end, with a slap, she completely stopped. It was as if the sky had collapsed and the earth had sunk. The Gong Princess consort cried as she returned to the champion Marquis Fu. Although her grandfather was the champion Marquis, her father held the right to speak. Her mother felt sorry for her, but Qin Tianming was a military general. He wouldn't fall for her crying, throwing a tantrum, and threatening to hang herself. So what if she was the Gong Princess consort? In his territory, she was only his daughter. Even if she turned into a dragon, she had to coil up. Even if she turned into a tiger, she had to lie down. As a result, the Gong Princess consort, who had been arrogant for several years, suffered 2 heavy blows on the same day. In an instant, she was like a flower in full bloom that lost its moisture, wilting. In the end, she was the Gong Princess consort, different from the average daughter-in-law. She couldn't stay in her maternal home for too long. Even if she stayed for a night, she was afraid that the next day, she would be reprimanded by the Empress. Therefore, the Gong Princess consort's honor guard came the same way, and she returned. Whether it was a respectful welcome or a respectful farewell, the champion Marquis Fu's etiquette was complete. However, the Gong Princess consort on the carriage didn't have the slightest sense of superiority, because she had personally experienced that all of her honor and glory really originated from her father. She had always denied this point, thinking that others were jealous that she was able to obtain all of her husband's favor. Even without her father, her husband would still treat her the same. This time, she had truly awakened from her beautiful dream. The feeling of falling from the clouds to the dust was always the ultimate pain. Was it hate? Definitely, but she didn't dare to retaliate against Jingwan. It was only because of the words that she, Qin Tianming, had said to her if he angered the living king of hell, he could really do anything. If he killed her old man in a fit of anger, even if it was a felony to kill a first-rank official for no reason, could the emperor kill his own son to make up for the official's life? At most, it would only be a demotion. According to the emperor's favor towards Jin Wang, it might only be a small punishment, but her old man's life would truly be gone. Without the left governor, the champion Marquis Fu could only wait to be divided up. She didn't have her father, so she could only wait to be given the cold shoulder or even be removed from the court. Therefore, she, Tang's Qin Wang Fei, couldn't do anything to a female official, so she felt vexed and aggrieved. Not only that, no matter how much the Gong Qin Wang Fei pretended, it was not as glorious as before. Naturally, she would be ridiculed and squeezed out by her sisters-in-law. There was nothing more vexing than this. Luo Jingwan was a god of plague. If she couldn't provoke him, then she could only hide. What Jingwan knew, Sun Yijian naturally also knew. She looked at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. Looking at Wan Mimi's meaning, it seems that you are quite honored. That's right. Jingwan nodded in agreement. Your skin is getting thicker as you age. If being thick-skinned can prevent yourself from getting hurt, then being thicker is also okay. Just like Jin Xin Wang Li Han Yuan, if his skin wasn't thick, would he start eating meat while hugging his fiancée? Definitely not, All right, Sun Yijiao was defeated by Jingwan's reasoning, but please, that was for outsiders, okay? All right, Gui Jianshou, can you still accompany me all the time? You used to be grandmother's intimate little cotton-padded jacket. If you spend all the time on me, grandmother will definitely be jealous. Then wouldn't my sim be big? Then it's even simpler. Without me, isn't there still my Sanji? Your Sanji is a big man. It's even more impossible for him to revolve around me. How would that look? You don't need to accompany me all the time. You only need to appear at the right time. Then the effect of abusing dogs will be good. Sunny Jiao was a bit confused. She could understand every word that Wan Mimi said, but she didn't understand when they were put together. Abusing dogs? What did it have to do with dogs? Jingwan didn't need to look to know what Sunny Jiao was thinking. This wasn't a generation gap, but a generation gap separated by time and space. Thinking about it, sometimes it seemed quite lonely. All right, Jingwan was a little sad. She slowly peeled the lychee shell. It was more interesting to eat these things by herself. In her own territory, she didn't need to care about her appearance. Well, to put it bluntly, it's just showing off. It's boring to show off clothes and jewelry. If you want to show off your husband. Words don't count. You have to let others see that your husband is not pretentious and not hypocritical. You have to show them that your husband truly cares about you. Only then will people be envious and jealous. No matter how much jealousy others have and say, you will only feel more comfortable. Yes, that was it. Among those noble people, no matter how good something was, it couldn't compare to a good husband. Sun Yijia understood what Jingwan meant. Wan Mimi was indeed full of bad ideas, but she also liked it very much. As for abusing dogs, she roughly understood. But wasn't it bad to compare those people to dogs? Forget it. Anyway, outsiders couldn't hear it. If Wan Mimi said that they were dogs, then they were dogs. Young lady, second young lady, and young master are here. Oh, second older sister has come back from worshipping the ancestors? On the day Luo Romping was injured, she sent a letter to Luo Jingxiang. However, it was said that the husband and wife had returned to the old residence to worship the ancestors. Fortunately, it wasn't too far away. A round trip would only take a few days. In addition, Luo Romping's specific condition was not confirmed, so she didn't anxiously send someone to send a letter to ask her to hurry back. However, her sister was here. Why did she bring her husband? Wasn't second older cousin at home? Let second brother-in-law go to third older brother's place? Jingwan glanced at Sunny Jia and saw that she also nodded. Yes, then let's do that. Second older sister, please come in. Jingwan's maidservant nimbly put away the unsuitable fruits on the table, as well as the seeds. Luo Jingxiang walked in unhurriedly under the guidance of a young maidservant. There was a faint smile on her face. When she saw Jingwan, her smile unconsciously became brighter. Compared to before she got married, Luo Jingxiang had changed a lot. It was obvious that she was living a good life in her husband's family. Second older sister, come and sit. In any case, they were sisters, not Luo Jingying, so there was no need for formalities. Luo Jingxiang didn't hold back. Third sister-in-law, third younger sister, I'm sorry to disturb you. It's fine. Jingwan waved her hand. Sunny Jia didn't mind and smiled at her. This smile made Luo Jingxiang feel a little flattered. The Sunny Jia in her mind was still the high and mighty noble lady, and not the third sister-in-law who had married into the Luo family and had a good temperament in all aspects. Sun Yijia pretended not to see and pushed the fruit plate in her hand to her. Eat some. Thank you, third sister-in-law. Sun Yijia nodded. It had to be said that even now, when there were other people around, her temperament was still a little cold. Second older sister, have you visited third uncle? Jingwan asked. Yes, I have. She didn't have any feelings for that man. She didn't feel the slightest fluctuation in her heart when she saw him lying limp on the bed. If it weren't for filial piety, and if it weren't for the people she cared about in the Luo family, she probably wouldn't have come back. However, Luo Jingxiang felt grateful to him. If it weren't for his accident, she wouldn't have come back so easily. Although her husband's family didn't care about her coming back to her parents' home at all, and even hoped that she would come back from time to time to get in touch with them, she couldn't do too much about it. However, her official mother's attitude was out of her expectations. It was as if she had changed into another person. Fourth younger sister sent someone back to visit father. He said that he was the steward of Prince Rui's mansion. Now second older brother is the only male in the third branch. Mother asked him to take care of people. This was the reason why she had brought her husband along. However, Luo Jingying sent someone back. It must be Prince Rue. It wasn't that Jingwan wanted to belittle her. She was going to the backyard of an unfamiliar residence alone. She thought that she had something solid to rely on, but it was actually thinner than a piece of paper. Whether it would become thicker or disappear completely in an instant, it all depended on Luo Peishan's attitude. A steward, and a man who she had never seen before, could be recruited by Luo Jingying in such a short time? Even if it was a joke, it couldn't be like this. Prince Rue hadn't completely given up on Luo Peishan. Otherwise, today's matter wouldn't have happened. However, it would be soon. At that time, Luo Jingying's good days would come to an end. My husband likes to draw. He admires third older brother, who can create fine brushwork. He has always wanted to learn from him. On the way here, he was excited and nervous like a young boy. Luo Jingqiang smiled. Sun Yijiao looked at Jingwan with ridicule. Jingwan ignored her. She was as still as a mountain. There was no doubt that fine brushwork was her third older brother's new creation. You're staying for 2 more days this time? Yes. Mother has already asked my concubine to clean up the place where I used to live. My husband has also been arranged to live in second older brother's courtyard. That's right. What surprised Luo Jingxiang the most was that her mother had been grounded. Now that she was in the third branch, she was no longer grounded. This didn't seem like her mother's style at all. In her opinion, everything was strange. Originally, the mother had schemed against the second aunt, but in the end, the mother had found her concubine mother to take the blame. The concubine mother had been grounded by the grandmother and had been ordered to move to the farmstead after she got married. When she returned home 3 days later, the grandmother had let her see the concubine mother. She seemed to have forgotten the punishment she had mentioned, and for some reason, the mother had not mentioned this matter. Until today, her concubine mother seemed to be fine. That's not bad. Jingwan nodded. Third younger sister, when I came here, I asked a steward who came with me about fourth younger sister's situation. Fourth younger sister seems to have a good life in Prince Rue's mansion. She enjoys silk and satin and delicacies from land and sea. Everyone avoids her and attends to her. Prince Rue also dotes on her very much. From the moment she entered the mansion until now, it seems that he has spent more than half of his days in her place. There were 2 times when Prince Rue rested in other places, and she asked someone to invite him, and Prince Rue agreed. What's more, one of them was in Princess Rue's place. It can be seen that he really dotes on her. Jingwan raised her eyebrows. It seemed that even her second sister had sensed that something was amiss and was trying to curry favor with her. However, such a small matter was not a big deal. Fourth sister is not lacking in talent and beauty. It is not surprising that Prince Rue dotes on you. However, Luo Jingying had always believed that Prince Rue loved her. Now, she was even more dizzy and forgetful. She dared to snatch someone from Princess Rue's hands. Jingwan had to praise her. She really had guts. However, Prince Rue also worked hard. In order to achieve his goal, he could be regarded as a different kind of real man. It was said that one should think twice before acting. No matter what one did, it was best to leave a way out for oneself. Did Luo Jingying not think that even if Prince Rue really liked her, could this love last a lifetime? She even offended Princess Rue. Madame Lu had taught her a lot. She couldn't be so stupid, right? Did she have something to rely on? Or was she really pregnant? What kind of luck did she have? She met several people who hit the jackpot on the first try, including the one in Sun Yijia's belly. Jingwan suspected that she was pregnant on the wedding night. Weren't there many people who didn't have children for many years? Jingwan and the others were chatting, and Luo Jingbua seemed to be very harmonious. For those who really liked fine brushwork and were all relatives, Luo Jingbua was not stingy with his time. He wanted to carry forward fine brushwork. Even if he couldn't let the world know that it was actually his younger sister's new creation, he hoped that his younger sister could see the world's admiration for fine brushwork. That was the glory that belonged to his younger sister. Although Prince Kong tried his best to prove his innocence, in the end, all the evidence still pointed to him, including the people who were detained. They probably really wanted to eat Prince Kong alive. Instead, they insisted that they were following his orders. Everything was said with certainty, and they even took out evidence that Prince Kong himself didn't know. Prince Kong was suddenly stunned. He didn't expect such a result. Originally, many people suspected that he didn't do it, but now more people believed him. And those who still didn't believe it looked like it had nothing to do with them. In fact, it wasn't that no one expected this result, but Prince Kong didn't do it properly. Who could he blame for shooting himself in the foot? Prince Kong flew into a rage like a furious beast. He cursed that a group of dogs dared to betray him. He didn't know how many officials who were loyal to him were bitterly disappointed. In order to let him ascend the throne, it could be said that they put in a lot of effort, but they didn't expect that in his eyes. They were a group of dogs that he could order to come and go as he pleased. However, he was just one of many princes. He thought that because he was the eldest son of the first wife, he took the throne for granted. Others scrambled for it because they were ambitious. Think about it. In history, how many of the sons who finally sat on the throne were the sons of the first wife? And how many were the eldest sons? Lu Qingdi was so angry with Prince Kong that his veins were bulging. He picked up something and smashed it down. When Prince Kong saw a black shadow flying over, he subconsciously raised his hand. Then that thing hit the ground with a bang and broke into pieces. When he took a closer look, it turned out to be a seal. Fortunately, it was only Lu Qingdi's private seal. If it was the Imperial Jade Seal, it would be a big joke. Prince Kong finally calmed down a little. When he saw the furious Emperor Lu Qingdi, his legs went soft and he swallowed his saliva. "Father, please believe me. I was really wronged. They framed me." Lu Qingdi looked at him coldly. "Li Hongyi framed a court official. He will be fined 1 year's salary. From now on, he will be suspended from all duties. Go back to the mansion and reflect on his mistakes. He is not allowed to take half a step out of the mansion without being summoned. If he violates this order, he will be stripped of his title and demoted to a commoner." This time, Prince Kang's mind really went blank. It took him a long time to recover. "Come on, drag this evil creature out and expel him from the palace immediately." The commander of the Imperial Guards personally led his men into the room and carried Prince Kong out. "Father, I'm really wronged. Believe me, I really didn't do anything." Unfortunately, no matter how he screamed, Lu Qingdi was indifferent. "Li Hongming, it's you, isn't it? It must be you who framed me. You despicable man. Do you think you can get away with it? I tell you, don't even think about it. Li Hongming, wait for me. I will never let you go." Prince Rue lowered his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes indifferent. And Lu Qingdi, who was in a rage, didn't dare to stroke his beard. "Empress' son." They thought that this matter was over, but Lu Qingdi opened his mouth again. This time, his words were enough to scare them out of their wits. Without waiting for him to continue, a group of people led by Ruan Ruiz Hong, the prime minister of the cabinet, immediately stepped forward. They couldn't let Lu Qingdi finish his sentence. After all, he had just attacked Prince Kong, and then he mentioned his mother. It was obvious that it was not something good. Empress' son was virtuous and virtuous. She had been careful and conscientious in managing the imperial harem for many years. She didn't make a big mistake. If she spoke without thinking and said something she shouldn't, it would be too late for regrets. Even Prince Rue didn't want to involve the Empress in this matter. Although he wanted to be the legitimate son, and noble consort Su wanted to be the Empress, this matter was not so simple. It involved too many people. If the Empress really fell, many people would be implicated. Noble consort Su would bear the brunt of everyone's attack. The imperial court was already unstable. If there was a bloody battle in the imperial harem, it would be really. Therefore, Prince Rui stepped out without hesitation. Lu Qingdi breathed a sigh of relief. He wasn't disappointed after all. However, Empress Sun didn't teach her son well. She is ordered to kneel in the ancestral temple for 2 hours to reflect on herself. She will stay in the imperial harem during the summer holiday next month. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, after dealing with this matter, Lu Qingdi took out a secret memorial and passed it to the officials to read. The western border is very important to the Qi Yuan. I believe everyone knows that although this matter didn't happen at an important pass, if it isn't handled well, it will cause a very bad impact, and even affect the safety of the border. Therefore, I want to send an imperial envoy to investigate this matter immediately and make appropriate arrangements." As soon as he said this, many people stepped out to ask for the order. There were civil and military officials. If this matter was handled well, it would be a great merit. Even the princes didn't want to miss it. As for the origin of this memorial, no one looked into it because it wasn't the first time it appeared. At the same time, no one questioned the contents of the memorial. As a candidate for the imperial envoy, I have already made my decision. Old Geo, you've been in the imperial harem for a long time. This time, I'm sending you to train and don't let me down. He was only 17 years old. In the imperial harem, he had been divided by his elder brothers. Although he was unwilling and hated that he was born late, there was nothing he could do. Although he had sided with the Empress on the surface, he still couldn't calm down. He wanted to make a good achievement and impress his father. However, important things never came to him. Naturally, he couldn't touch the important things. He always came in contact with the minor details. This time, he was eager to fight for it. However, he didn't have much hope. Unexpectedly, he was surprised. After being stunned for a moment, he hurriedly thanked his father. "Don't worry, father. I won't let you down." "Very good. Go back and get ready. We'll set off tomorrow." As for the entourage, Minister Luo, do you have a suitable candidate in mind? After all, this wasn't a small matter. Naturally, it was impossible to leave it to a greenhorn. In fact, the entourage was the key. Luo Peishan was the minister of the Ministry of Personnel. Coupled with his recent actions, Lu Qingdi still had high expectations for the person he recommended. Luo Peishan thought for a moment and casually named a few people. Combined with the contents of the previous memorial, he recommended people from the Ministry of Civil Affairs, the Ministry of Revenue, the Ministry of War, and even the Ministry of Justice. Obviously, he had considered all the possible situations that might be involved and who would be suitable to represent them. As for which faction they belonged to, Luo Peishan said that he didn't know. Lu Qingdi thought for a moment and decided to arrange it like this. They were all people recommended by Luo Peishan. None of them were changed. "Your Majesty, I have one more thing to say," Luo Peishan said. "Speak." "For this trip, perhaps we can add the 3 people who passed the Jinshu exam this year. They are all the future pillars of Qi Yuan. Why don't we take this opportunity to train them? In the future, they will be able to serve Your Majesty and Qi Yuan better. In addition, they are all young people. Along the way, Your Highness won't be lonely. Perhaps you can learn from each other." Minister Luo's words are reasonable. I approve. "Your Majesty, how about adding son Bingbai from the internal court?" "That's great." Lu Qingdi agreed without hesitation. Thus, the main personnel for this trip to the western border was finalized in the conversation between the monarch and his minister. As for these people, the others really didn't have any good ideas. After all, Luo Peishan was really looking at the big picture and was impartial. If he wanted to squeeze someone out and replace them with his own people, it was inevitable that he would be caught and criticized. However, with Lord Geo as the leader, Lord Geo's birth mother relied on the Empress in the harem. In other words, he was equivalent to Prince Kang's little follower. Lu Qingdi had just angered him, and now he chose his people to do this important task. Did it mean that Lu Qingdi was not completely disappointed in him? Prince Kang would stand up sooner or later. It was naturally difficult to refute something that had been decided. However, "Father, according to Lord Luo's suggestion, why don't we let Lord Geo go with us? He joined the court later than Lord Geo, and it's time for him to gain experience. Let's not talk about what to do. Even if he just watches and listens, I think it will be very beneficial for Lord Geo. What do you think?" Prince Rui said. The 10th Wang Ye was his follower. Everyone was well aware of his intentions. Lu Qingdi pondered for a moment. Originally, the plan was to let Lord Geo and Lord Geo be imperial envoys. However, because of the previous incident, in order to balance things out, he naturally had to appease Lord Geo when he suppressed Lord Geo. However, it was not impossible to let Lord Geo follow him and not participate in the decision-making. Approved. Thank you, Father. Prince Rui kowtowed and thanked him. Lord Geo, who was indignant, also thanked him with joy at this time. However, His joy was somewhat exaggerated. Thinking about it, it was reasonable. His elder brother, who was not much older than him, was in charge, while he just followed him. It was a living torture. In this case, it was better for him to stay in the capital and then go to Qingda Palace to avoid the summer heat and live a comfortable and happy life. Prince Rue glanced at him and more or less felt his dissatisfaction. He frowned imperceptibly. The other four did not have the qualifications to attend the imperial court yet. After hearing about this matter, they were all grateful to Luo Peishan. Not everyone would have such an opportunity when they were just starting out. It should be known that this kind of experience would allow them to have a better start than others. Moreover, there were so many officials on this trip, and they had nothing to do during the journey. They believed that if they asked for advice, most of them would not refuse. After the court, Lord Luo is really not stingy to guide the younger generation. Ruan Ruiz Hong said with a calm expression, even if others did not dare to point fingers at him. The rumors that caused the whole family to be afraid to go out still made him very angry. Luo Peishan still did not get along with him. Even a saint was angry, not to mention he was not a saint. If Luo Peishan wanted to go against him, why should he be polite and bear with it? The moment he made such a decision, it meant that Ruan Ruizhong had lost his normal heart. In this way, when he did things in the future, it was inevitable that he would be biased. In this way, the balance would be tilted, and he could no longer be absolutely neutral. Luo Peishan chuckled and put on a fake smile. As a minister of the Ministry of Personnel, is that what I should do? Ruan Ruizhong nodded and turned to leave. Luo Peishan looked at his retreating figure with some pity. If a person like you one day found out that you were treated like a fool, kept in the dark, and played by the people you trusted and loved dearly, how would you react? Perhaps, when you were thinking wholeheartedly for them, they were actually laughing at you in their hearts and treating you like a clown. How sad would that be? After Li Hongyuan saw the list of people on this trip to the west, although most of the people were different from the people in his previous life, it did not exceed his expectations. However, after seeing Sun Yilin and Chen Jingmin's names, he laughed coldly. To put it nicely, he was guiding the younger generation, but he still felt guilty toward these two people. The other two were just incidental. This old fox was not really that selfless. This favor had allowed him to pick up 100%. This time, there was only one imperial envoy. Without Old 10th to oppose him, Old 9th should listen to his advice and handle this matter well. Li Hongyi's stupidity could be considered as doing a good thing. He did not need to worry about the aftermath. After reading the list, he threw it aside and did not ask about it anymore. Anyway, he did not completely ignore it. If there was an unexpected situation, the people on the other side would definitely send news. Now, he should think about how to pull Wan into his arms when he arrived at the temporary imperial residence. In the temporary imperial residence, they lived relatively close to each other. However, because it was crowded, it also meant that there were many eyes. However, at that time, there would be all kinds of banquets, poetry banquets, flower banquets, and even wine banquets every day. It would be easy to fish in troubled waters. Muin, how are the preparations at the temporary imperial residence? In reply to Master, this servant personally watched everyone arrange one by one. You can rest assured that nothing will go wrong. That was the Master's pleasure nest. This year, there was a high chance that the future female master would also go there. Naturally, he did not dare to have the slightest neglect. Eunuch Mu lowered his head for a long time and did not wait for his master's response. He slightly raised his head and took a look. The beauty was lying on the couch with her eyes closed. She seemed to be asleep. His master with his eyes closed was always more harmless than with his eyes open. However, even so, Eunuch Mu did not dare to take another look. Tian did not need to be covered with a quilt in this state. After thinking about it, he personally took the fan and moved closer to her. Gently, with a rhythm that was neither fast nor slow, he fanned her again and again. 2 days after the people going to the west were ready to set off, the list of people going to the temporary imperial residence for the summer was also released. As for the candidate to stay in the capital to supervise the country, it was really unexpected. It was the 7th prince, who had no sense of existence. He was 2 years younger than Li Hongyuan. He was not picky in his work and was always able to complete the tasks given to him. Except for some things that had already been decided by objective conditions, the things that needed his subjective participation were basically just passable, and the results were mediocre. His biological mother was just a palace maid who died early. However, at that time, he was already 6 years old. Lu Qingdi did not give him to other concubines to raise, and he was raised by a group of palace maids. Perhaps because he had no one to rely on, he was not bullied or embarrassed. This time, he was asked to stay and supervise the country for 2 months. It could only be said that misfortune and fortune came hand in hand. After all, Prince Rui thought that after Li Hongyi was gone, he would definitely be the one to supervise the country. As for the Gong Prince, before his eldest brother was taken away, he shouted that it was the third prince who harmed him. Regardless of whether it was true or not, Imperial Father would not let him supervise the country. Then, the possibility of it being him was very high. Li Hongyuan and the sickly fifth prince were definitely not considered, and from the start, no one thought about the seventh prince. Most likely, it was either the third prince or the fourth prince or both. Hey, who knows, it was not even one. In Li Hongyuan's previous life, there was no Luo romping incident, so Li Hongyi was not grounded, but the one to supervise the country was still the seventh prince. In addition, of the 4 cabinet elders, except for the Grand Secretary, the other 3 were left to assist the seventh prince. This point was consistent. In his previous life, these 2 months in the capital were peaceful, but this time, it might not be so. After all, there was still Li Hongyi in the capital. Even if he was grounded, not allowed to take half a step out of the palace. Don't forget, the Empress was also staying in the palace. If she wanted to do something, it was very likely that she would not be discovered. This made people look forward to it. Of course, Li Hongyuan was also waiting for this opportunity to thoroughly deal with Ruan Fangfei. With his quasi-concubine title, it was really an incomparable eyesore. On the last 2 days of the 5th month, headed by Lu Qingdi's ceremonial guards, a fleet of carriages with no end in sight majestically left the capital. Chapter 167. Chengde's summer palace was not far from the capital, about 200 miles away. However, because of the slow speed, it would take 2 or 3 days, or even longer, to get there. In such weather, it must be uncomfortable to sleep in the open. However, this group of people were either members of the royal family or high-ranking officials and nobles. With a group of people serving them, they could even bathe 8 times a day properly, let alone eat, drink, go to the toilet, and sleep. Of course, this was just a saying. Even the King of Hell would not be so crazy. Compared with when they were at home, everything was about the same. However, this was only Jingwan's thought. Along the way, there were all kinds of complaints. Fortunately, a lot of things had been taken away by the servants in advance to thoroughly clean up the residents of the summer palace. At the same time, everything had been settled. Otherwise, it would have been even more infuriating. This time, the masters of the Luo family who went to Chengde's summer palace for the summer could be counted with one hand. In the first branch, because little Wang was about to give birth, Wang naturally could not leave. Her husband, Luo Rongwen, was an official, so he was not in the entourage. Luo Rongwei was also on an errand at present. Needless to say, Luo romping. With his condition, it was better for him to stay at home. Nominally, Lu had to take care of him. The one who was relatively free was Luo Rongyan, who had a nominal position. However, he seemed to be stimulated and now began to work hard. Even if he did not like those things in the officialdom, he forced himself to slowly accept them. Like Zhang, Madame Wu was reluctant to leave her husband. Therefore, the 8 people of their generation did not go. Naturally, Madame Luo and the concubines and so on were even less likely to have a chance. As for the younger generation, except for Jingwan and Luo Jingbua, the others did not go. The reason was very simple. Their parents did not go. If they went, wouldn't the old madam take care of them? Madame Luo's health looked good. However, after Luo Peishan learned that he almost died a few years ago, he did not dare to let her tire herself out. Therefore, except for those who did not need to worry, everyone stayed at home obediently. The only ones who did not need to worry and could leave it all were Jingwan, Luo Jingbua, and Sun Yijia. Although Madame Luo did not say anything, it was not bad. Therefore, along the way, the Luo family could be said to be the most easygoing family. Although Jingwan tried her best to integrate into this world and did not need to look at the people under the feudal imperial society as equals, most of the time, she still tried her best to be considerate of the people who served her. If the people who served them worked hard, then the servants who served them must work even harder. Even at the moment, whether they were served or served, their status had already determined everything. If they were taken for granted, Jingwan still could not completely synchronize with their thoughts. Jingwan had been by Madame Luo's side for so many years. Madame Luo was more or less influenced by Jingwan. She did not deliberately do anything and acted naturally. It seemed that when she saw too many people wandering around in front of her, she became more annoyed and irritable. Sun Yijia had been with Jingwan for a long time and was also imperceptibly influenced. Therefore, while the servants of other families were busy with work, the Luo family section was much quieter. The servants even had time to stay in the carriage to enjoy the cool air and chat with each other. Even if they had something to do, there was no sign of them being in a hurry. Sun Yijia's servant girls gathered together with Jingwan. Third young lady has always been like this. They asked curiously. She did not quite understand what they meant. Therefore, the other party pointed to the family behind the Luo family. The carriages were moving forward, but the servants had to run in front and back. Their clothes had long been soaked in sweat. The status of the servants in charge of running was relatively low among the servants. They looked like they were mostly 12 or 13 years old. Jingwan's servant girls could not help but laugh. Our young lady has always been very good. She has a good temper and is generous to us. She never loses her temper. Even to us, as servants, she is very considerate. If there's a small illness or pain, she will give us leave. Usually, she will also say that we will take turns to take leave. I think there is no master better to serve than our young lady. They had always known this, but they had never experienced it more deeply than now. Hearing their words, Sun Yijia's servant girls were a little envious. However, their young lady was actually very good, and now there was a tendency for her to be closer to third young lady. It was their blessing to be able to serve such a master. However, a certain mama who also happened to hear these words thought more. However, if they only had this side of leniency, they probably wouldn't be able to raise these servant girls who were strict with themselves. Even if Qing Ju's temperament was a bit jumpy, she wouldn't be careless in the things that she should do. At this moment, the carriages stopped. It was obvious that Lu Chengdi was making trouble again. Qing Ju stretched her head out to look. Seeing the wet nurse in the carriage in front of them getting off and walking towards them, she hurriedly waved her hand, indicating that she knew and did not need to come over. I will go and see the young lady first. You guys prepare some iced fruits for the young lady. Also, go and find out how long we will stop. If it is long, find a place outside and open an umbrella. Qing Ju said and then got off the carriage. The others also quickly took action. Because she had been in the carriage for a long time, Jingwan was a little carsick. However, she still stayed quietly and did not cause trouble for others. Before she left, Nanny Gong and the others had already prepared a lot of food for her. They were especially particular about the food. Sun Yijia benefited a lot from the food. She was pregnant, so it was naturally more difficult for her. But when they were preparing, Jingwan had already prepared a portion for her. She seemed to be in good spirits, much better than Jingwan. Luo Jingbua and Sun Yijia were very grateful. This little sister was so considerate. Jingwan just smiled. Anyway, she was going to use it herself, and sister-in-law was just incidental. They knew very well whether it was incidental or not. She could have told them in advance and let them prepare it themselves. But in fact, some of the things that Nanny Gong and the others prepared were specially for Sun Yijia. In fact, Jingwan really felt that it was too troublesome to ask her brother and sister-in-law to prepare another set of things. Anyway, she had to prepare more at one time. It would save her a lot of trouble. There were not many things that were specially prepared for Sun Yijia. Sun Yijia's wet nurse and the others all saw this and were very grateful. After Sun Yijia's wet nurse, who specially served her in this aspect, was driven away, they had been learning. But after all, they did not have enough time to learn many things. Moreover, Nanny Gong, an etiquette instructor, seemed to be omniscient in this aspect. At this time, they did not care so much and hurriedly asked for advice. Nanny Gong was not stingy. Sun Yijia stayed in Jingwan's carriage because Jingwan's carriage was not only comfortable, but also not so bumpy. In fact, when they left the capital, Jingwan had already prepared to give half of it to her. Even if she did not stay, she would have let her stay. She leaned comfortably and took a nap like this for a while. Looking at it now, Jin Qinhuang is not that bad. Wan Mimi, don't you think so? Jingwan closed her eyes and faintly made an end sound. Sun Yijia could not tell if she was really responding to her or if she was just being perfunctory. Sun Yijia saw that she suddenly became so delicate. Thinking about it, it also made people's heart ache. Wan Mimi, the carriages have stopped. Do you want to go down for a walk? Wait a moment. Let's see how long it will be. When Sun Yijia heard this, she did not move. She looked at the decorations on the roof of the carriage and suddenly became interested. She carefully looked at the layout of the carriage. A lot of things looked ordinary, but if you paid a little attention, you would find that there was not a single thing that was ordinary. Ivory mats were considered extravagant in Duke Ding's Fu, but they were directly used to cushion the ground. When she first came in, she did not notice it. When she noticed it, the corners of her mouth could not help but twitch. In this couch, she did not know what was inside the cushion. It was soft and cool. Under the cushion, Sun Yijia reached out and touched it. The edges were very smooth. Because it was covered, Sun Yijia did not know what material it was made of. She simply lifted it from the bottom to take a look. Then, Sun Yijia silently put it down. Cool jade. It was actually cool jade that was even rarer than warm jade. The entire bottom of the couch was covered with it. As for the other things, Sun Yijia did not want to continue looking. If she continued to look, she, who grew up in a rich nest, would be jealous. Should it be said that he was worthy of being called the richest and most prodigal Jin Qinhuang? Just the things that were on the surface, Sun Yijia slightly estimated. His mother, the value was already more than 1,000,000 taels of silver. That's right, this carriage was sent over by Li Honyuan a day before they set off. From the outside, it looked very ordinary and suited Jingwan's status. But inside, those who didn't know what was good for them didn't care, but those who knew what was good for them felt like they were blind. When old Madame Luo saw this carriage, she was also silent for a while. However, she heard that this carriage had been specially modified so that it would not be so bumpy. She thought about how her own granddaughter had been sitting in this carriage for a long time and thought about the matter of Jin Qinhuang. No matter how much he cared about Wan Wan, his bad reputation was something that he owed Wan Wan. Moreover, Wan Wan was his daughter-in-law from outside. No matter how good he was to Wan Wan, it was only right that he treated her well. Thus, he impolitely waved his hand and let Jingwan take it. Jingwan did not look carefully at the things on the carriage. In any case, she had seen the extravagance of Li Hongyuan's carriage. Naturally, she did not pay much attention to it. What she cared about was also the shock absorption effect. However, for Jingwan, Jin Qinhuang was actually just a person that she knew. It was more special. Aside from the status of being engaged, there was also a very intimate contact. Even so, there was still no way for her to calmly accept his things. Although in Qiyuan, after an engagement, giving some things would not be criticized, but what Jin Qinhuang did for her was considered considerate and thoughtful. To a certain extent, for example, it was usually two families who gave gifts during the new year. What he did was a bit excessive. However, seeing that her grandmother accepted it without saying anything, Jingwan did not say much. In any case, the one who enjoyed it in the end would be herself. If she used all sorts of excuses to brush away Jin Qinhuang's face, it would not only make things difficult for him, it would also make her seem pretentious. She did not want to be a slut. Even after she found out the value of this carriage, she was silent for a moment and did some calculations. She was given a luxurious carriage that was probably worth a few 100 million yuan. When she thought about how the other party's net worth was in the tens or hundreds of billions, to him, this was probably just a drop in the ocean. Thus, Jingwan calmed down. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan's goal was to make Jingwan feel more comfortable and did not think of pleasing her. Otherwise, Jingwan's reaction would probably be so cold that he would be depressed again. However, Li Hongyuan also knew that Jingwan did not really care about material things. If it was good or fine, she could enjoy it. If it was bad or rough, she would not complain or refuse. It all depended on the environment. Therefore, if he wanted to use ordinary means like clothes and jewelry to please her, it was basically impossible. Sun Yijia closed her eyes to avoid being annoyed. Seeing that Jin Xinwang's current performance was still barely acceptable, she decided to say less bad things about him. Of course, just this was definitely not enough. That rotten virtue of being fond of beauty was the key point. Thinking of this, Sun Yijia was stuffy again. Even if he was a Qin Wang, couldn't he be a bit more clean? There was a rustling sound outside. Very quickly, the inner curtain was lifted. Qing Zhu had already taken off her embroidered shoes. She first greeted Sun Yijia, then walked to Jingwan's side and whispered, "Miss, are you still uncomfortable?" Jingwan opened her eyes. "It's okay. Do you know how long it will be?" "I already want to ask. Does Miss want to eat some fruit?" "Don't eat too much. Don't worry, I know your habits. How about this servant read a passage to you now?" When the carriage was moving, reading a book hurt the eyes. Miss never let them read at that time. Not for the time being. Jingwan sat up. "Sister-in-law, what do you think? Anyone with discerning eyes can see that I am definitely better than you." Sun Yijia teased. "Then it's fine," Jingwan said without thinking. Pregnant people fainted more easily. This was an indisputable fact. But now, she was even more delicate than pregnant women. Jingwan was also helpless. Qing Zhu covered her mouth and laughed. She took the round fan and gently fanned Jingwan. Because Sun Yijia was pregnant, there was no ice basin in the carriage. However, the inside of the carriage was much cooler than outside, so she wouldn't sweat if she stayed inside quietly. Because of this, Sun Yijia decided to stay. Otherwise, she wouldn't be willing to let Jingwan suffer without ice along with her. Sun Yijia had been puzzled before. Her carriage didn't have this effect. Now, she suspected that under the ivory mat, there was also cold jade. Fan's sister-in-law. Pregnant people get hot easily. As soon as she finished speaking, the curtain was lifted again. This time, there were several people. "Miss, third young madam, there is a message from the front. There's a forest ahead. His Majesty thinks the scenery is good, so he asked us to stop. He said that we will continue after lunch. This servant will ask someone to hold up the umbrella. Come down and sit for a while." There were still 2 hours before lunch. Moreover, even if the forest was big enough, could the carriage go deep into it? As expected of the emperor, he would never consider the feelings of others, nor would he consider the feelings of others. He was really not an ordinary kind of willfulness. This stop would take at least 4 hours. They could not stay in the carriage for long. The wet nurse and the maidservant quickly prepared the things outside. Unlike other families who had to spend time and effort to set up a shelter, they only had a big umbrella. With Sister Hei and Bai Xiao, they did not need to spend much effort to set up the umbrella. Then they laid out a mat, a low table, a chair, tea and snacks, a fruit plate, and even quickly made a vase with materials from the ground. Sun Yijia saw the whole process. Speaking of which, the other families had not set up the pillars yet, but it was all done here. Moreover, it was a few servant girls who looked equally delicate. Sun Yijia turned to look at Jingwan. She felt that this result must have something to do with Sister Wan. TSK, she was indeed different. It was obviously a very simple thing, but others could not think of it. "Sister-in-law, don't be in a daze. Let's go." Jingwan looked at Sun Yijia's admiring eyes and found it amusing. Was it necessary? She just made it according to the beach sunbathing in her previous life. When the two of them got out of the carriage, Luo Jinghua also came over. When he saw that the shelter was ready, he glanced at Jingwan. "Just now, I asked grandmother if I should ask someone to set up a shelter. Grandmother said that I don't need to worry about it. Little sister, you will get it ready. I was thinking that how could I let you do this kind of thing? In the end, I am the one who is idling. Jingwan rolled her eyes at him. Little sister, hey, give the umbrella in your hand to third young master. He doesn't want to be an idler. Luo Jingbo looked at the big umbrella. Little sister Hei could hold it easily, but he guessed that it was not light. Little sister Hei's eyes obviously had some bad intentions. To avoid embarrassing himself, he repeatedly begged for mercy. Little sister, third elder brother was wrong. Please forgive third elder brother. Third elder brother is just an idler. Sun Yijiao walked over and smiled as she gently pinched his arm. Good for nothing. Luo Jingbo went from idling to living off a woman. With little sister and a capable wife, it doesn't matter if I'm not good for nothing. His expression was especially shameless. Bastard, you really are good for nothing. Luo Peishan scolded him. Luo Jingbo shrunk his neck and immediately jumped behind Sun Yijia. He pulled Sun Yijia's arm. Wife, why didn't you remind me that grandfather was coming? He seemed to have lowered his voice, but in fact, everyone heard it. Even though she knew that he was doing it on purpose, Sun Yijia still blushed. Who cares about you? You good for nothing. She quickly walked to Jingwan's side. She even wished that Jingwan's entire body would block her. Luo Jingbo looked quite aggrieved. Everyone finally couldn't hold back their laughter. It seemed that the unbearable heat had subsided a lot. You're all not young anymore, but you're still acting like children. Madame Luo laughed and shook her head. While they were joking around, 2 more large umbrellas were set up, and other things were also prepared. Luo Peishan stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. It's indeed fast and convenient. Thus, when the other families had just started, the masters of the Luo family had already sat down and started chatting. That wasn't all. An even bigger umbrella was taken down. What was different was that after it was opened, the pillars were at the 4 corners. After it was fixed, it was completely a shade. The things the servants were doing could all be placed under it. Little sister, actually, 2 of those would be enough. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Luo Jingbo looked up. This is called fun. Do you understand? Jingwan said unhappily. She could say that when she was in Qian Prefecture, she was used to such big umbrellas. The furthest place she traveled was her own village, so there was no need for the servants to do outdoor work. Thus, a few days before she left, she had people prepare a few big umbrellas. Only then did she realize that it was actually inconvenient, so she thought of this. In the end, Nurse Gong and the others nodded as if it was a matter of course. Masters and servants should be separated. Well, Jingwan didn't say anything. Luo Jingbo didn't know what fun was, but separating like this was indeed more comfortable than all of them being under the same shade. When the left and right families of the Luo family saw the situation of the Luo family, they were immediately envious, jealous, and hateful. Especially those servants who were busy putting up airs. They were sweating profusely. As for the masters, they didn't have a place to stay for a long time, so they felt more and more stuffy in the carriage. Even the ice basin couldn't relieve the heat, so their temper became even more irritable. Nurse Gong brought them freshly squeezed fruit juice. Everyone else used iced fruits. Jingwan and Luo Jingbo even had a small piece of ice added. However, Madame Luo and Sun Yijia used slightly cold fruits. While the others were still looking at the strange sight, Madame Luo was the first to pick up a small bamboo tube and put it into the juice. She took a sip and then let out a subtle sigh of relief. However, seeing her relaxed expression, her heart should be extremely happy. However, looking at her skillful movements, it was obvious that she was used to this. When the other 3 saw this, they followed suit. After taking a sip, they all felt very comfortable. Jingwan also slowly took a sip. The cool feeling slid from her mouth to her stomach, making her whole body feel comfortable. The discomfort caused by the motion sickness was almost instantly reduced by a lot. Drinking icy cold fruit juice with his family, there were people fanning him beside. Even though it was June, it was still a great enjoyment to be in the wilderness with such beautiful scenery. Jingwan looked at the forest in the distance and was a little lost in thought. Sun Yijia reached out and waved her hand in front of Jingwan. She didn't know when, but she had moved from Luo Jingbo to Jingwan's side. When she saw Jingwan looking at her, she asked, "What are you looking at? Didn't you hear me when I called you?" Jingwan raised the corner of her mouth, and a smile overflowed from the depths of her eyes. "I just suddenly feel very happy. Even if it's a hot summer day, even if it's a little uncomfortable now, I still feel very good." Hearing her words, the others looked over, especially Madame Luo, whose gaze was exceptionally gentle. "Grandmother is also very happy, isn't she?" Jingwan smiled. Madame Luo didn't deny it and nodded with a faint smile. Looking at her smile, Luo Peishan suddenly understood something. He had let her down a lot. However, even so, at this time, he couldn't bring up the idea of retiring and then accompany her to enjoy her old age. The one who understood Luo Peishan the most was indeed Madame Luo. Seeing his expression at this time, she knew what he was thinking. Lord doesn't need to think too much. This moment is enough. Even if it was for Wan, it was impossible for him to retire at this time. Although they didn't particularly understand the atmosphere between the two elders, Luo Jingbua and Sun Yijia looked at each other tacitly. Their eyes flashed with a seemingly indescribable warmth, but they understood each other's feelings. Jingwan subconsciously covered her eyes. Single people couldn't afford to be hurt. This pair of old and young represented the beginning and end of a marriage. They were brimming with happiness, and the lethality of this was extraordinary. It caused her to even have a little bit of expectation for marriage. Iching Luo is very comfortable. Hearing this, the masters of the Luo family hurriedly looked back. Lu Qingdi was standing beside the carriage, and behind him was a group of people. His sons, palace servants, and the imperial guards brought along with them. They obviously came from the other side of the carriage. "Your Majesty the Emperor, you should at least let someone say something in advance. Is it really good for you to silently inspect the private lives of your subjects?" All right, in this person's eyes, there was probably nothing he did that could be said to be bad. The servants followed their masters and hurriedly stood up to salute. "Iching, you may dispense with the formalities." Lu Qingdi modestly raised his hand. He walked over unhurriedly and saw the things on the table. Iching Luo is indeed very comfortable. His voice couldn't help but become a little happier. Along the way, in fact, Lu Qingdi's pressure was getting lower and lower. He felt that when he was in the capital, he didn't have such a good time. So, he stopped on a whim, intending to let everyone enjoy themselves. Then, he was prepared to see how grateful they were to him on a whim. However, it was obvious that they didn't hear the gratitude. There were a lot of grumbling and complaining. When they saw him, they were scared pale and knelt down to beg for forgiveness. But he couldn't punish them because of this. Although he was angry, he still continued to walk as if he was torturing himself. Except for Li Hanyuan, who was still calm and composed, the rest of the people who followed him didn't dare to breathe loudly for fear of offending him accidentally. But now, when they came to the Luo family, it seemed that the gloomy atmosphere suddenly turned sunny. Lu Qingdi looked around. Sure enough, it wasn't his decision that was wrong. It was clearly that the others were too stupid. Who came up with this idea? Jingwan stepped forward at Luo Peishan's signal. "Your Majesty, it was me." "Oh, it's you again. Good. You're really smart." Lu Qingdi looked very pleased. "Your Majesty, you flatter me. I'm just opportunistic. It's nothing. You don't have to be modest. Even if you're opportunistic, I don't see anyone else who has this ability. What are you drinking? Give me a cup." Even though he was sweating now, Lu Qingdi was still in high spirits. It was obvious that he wanted to stay. The table of the two elders was quickly cleaned up. Lu Qingdi was invited to sit down, and his close servant who served him hurriedly followed Nanny Gong to prepare fruit juice and other things for him. Because they didn't bring Lu Qingdi's special things, they could only make do with the Luo family's things at this time. However, all the things were checked again and again. Although it was reasonable to do so, because it was for the emperor, it still made people angry. It was Nanny Gong who had this thought. However, she didn't show it on her face at all. If she really wanted to poison him, there were many poisons that couldn't be detected by silver needles. While waiting, Nanny Gong said, "My dear minister, go get the chess pieces and play a game with me." Because Jingwan's carriage was the closest, he directly took the chess pieces from her carriage. Chapter 168. Unexpectedly, Jingwan met Jin Qinhuang's gaze, but after a brief moment of contact, she seemed to naturally shift her gaze away. Because of that intimate contact, she could maintain her composure on the surface, but to say that she didn't care at all, it would definitely be a lie. Moreover, she always felt that his gaze was too invasive. Placing the chessboard and chess pieces on the table in front of Lu Chengdi and Luo Peishan, Lu Chengdi knocked on the chessboard and picked up a chess piece to examine it. "Oh, my beloved subject, you really dote on your granddaughter, ah? The things you give her are better than what Jin usually uses." Lu Chengdi was just saying this and didn't have any other meaning. He basically knew the details of the important ministers in the court. The Luo family also had 200 to 300 years of accumulation. Its history was much longer than the Li dynasty, so it was normal to have some family property. He wasn't the kind of person who would allow the things his subjects used to be better than his own. Moreover, who stipulated that the emperor must use the most extravagant things. What he used, even if it was tattered, others had to treat it as a treasure. Between the monarch and his subjects, there was no one who gave way to the other. They directly followed the rules. Luo Peishan placed the first chess piece and glanced at Jingwan. This girl is very lovable, but she is the most worry-free. So he could only give her some good things. Luo Peishan was so shameless to take Li Hongyuan's credit. Lu Chengdi nodded in understanding. Every family's parent had the same mentality. He also glanced at Jingwan. She's indeed a good girl, ah? Why don't Jun have such a daughter? However, they all say that a son-in-law is half a son, so this daughter-in-law is also half a daughter. Saying this, his gaze swept and fell on his sick son, who quite consciously sat on Jingwan's seat. "You evil creature, treat your daughter-in-law better in the future. Do you hear me?" It could be seen that Lu Chengdi also knew the extent of his son's dregs, which was really hateful. Li Hongyuan acted as if he didn't hear it. He didn't even look at Lu Chengdi. He threw the small bamboo tube in Jingwan's cup aside, picked it up and drank it up. His actions were natural and smooth, so fast that no one could stop him. She smacked her lips. "It tastes pretty good. Give me another glass." She shook the glass, and the ice cubes clinked inside. "Add more ice." Sharing a cup of wine in front of everyone was something that husband and wife would not do, especially if the husband drank the wife's leftovers. If this was known, the wife would probably be scolded to death by her mother-in-law. Jingwan was very embarrassed. "Wang, yeah, I know you're used to being casual, but can't you be a little more careful? It doesn't matter if you're thick-skinned, but..." Although he felt that Li Hongyuan's behavior was inappropriate, he had done countless things hundreds of times worse, so Lu Chengdi didn't feel anything. He looked back at the chessboard. "Bastard." He put down the chess piece in his hand. Jingwan breathed a sigh of relief. However, a certain king of hell refused to stop. He looked up at Jingwan and knocked on the table with the cup. Jingwan had a headache, asking Wang Ye to wait for a moment. She directly left and gave him another cup. She didn't juice it again like when she served Lu Chengdi. Instead, she poured the previously squeezed juice. In order to speed up the cooling of the juice, she directly broke the ice. Seeing that Gong Mama had already prepared the other prince's cups, she said, "Mama, send it over together." Gong Mama wanted to help, but according to her understanding of a certain person, if she really did that, it would definitely cause trouble. "Miss Jin Qinhuang." "All right, Mama, you don't need to say anything." "I know." It could be seen that even if Jingwan didn't have much contact with him, she still had a deep understanding of some things. She waited until Lu Chengdi's portion was ready before sending it over together. "Wang Ye, please enjoy." Using the same cup, Li Hongyuan poured the juice into the previous cup before picking it up to drink. Jingwan deliberately didn't want him to continue using her cup. As a result, meeting such a person, Jingwan was really at her wit's end. In addition, she held up 2 large umbrellas, which were also the last 2. She might as well just have enough for the other princes to use. There were a total of 4 kinds of juice. She poured them into the pot, paired them with cups and ice cubes before presenting them. After asking about the prince's preferences, the maidservants then served them. They ate a lot of fruits and squeezed juice, but they always felt that the taste was a bit strange. They didn't really drink it, let alone adding ice cubes, this novel method. This was also your third miss idea? Prince Rue asked, replying to Wang yes. The maidservant respectfully replied. Prince Rue thought of his third Mississippi. Although they both had the surname Luo, they were too different. His gaze swept over Jingwan. If it was her, he was afraid that Luo Peishan would take the initiative to pledge allegiance to him without him doing anything. When his eyes gradually became deep and serene, he suddenly felt a sharp light. He was slightly startled and met Li Hongyuan's eyes, which were overflowing with hostility. The weather in June was as cold as winter. Prince Rue thought that if he dared to covet Luo Peishan's woman as his legal wife, he didn't know what would happen. Moreover, his father, the emperor, and mother would not let him off. He immediately smiled at Li Hongyuan to show that he absolutely had no evil thoughts. Li Hongyuan raised the corner of his mouth, which was a bit sinister. Lu Qingdi looked at the chessboard and reached out his hand. The attendant handed the cup to him. When he took it back, he saw the small bamboo tube. Even if he had never used it before, he immediately learned it without a teacher. He took a sip. It tasted good, but it was a bit cold. Even if he hadn't eaten it before, he knew that there was no ice in it. Why didn't you add ice? The valet groaned inwardly. Ice cubes were so cold that many people could eat them. Emperors in history did not live long lives, including Emperor Lu Qingdi. In fact, his physical condition was far worse than his peers. If something happened to his body, who would be responsible? Was it because they didn't serve him well enough? Or was it because the Luo family shouldn't have taken out this way of eating? Even if you are the emperor, there should be a limit to your willfulness. Eating ice at your age, do you want to die? Lu Qingdi's veins bulged on his forehead. He threw the chess piece in his hand over. Evil creature, I am still young. What's wrong with eating some ice? Who could be more willful than you? Li Hongyuan raised his hand and caught the chess piece. You have a bunch of grandchildren, and you dare to say that you are young? It's one thing to refuse to accept old age, and another to deceive yourself. No matter how willful I am, I will not joke about my body. It's not yours, so don't smash it. Also, being impulsive and easily angered is harmful to the body. Lu Qingdi's chest heaved up and down. It was obvious that he was very angry. Luo Peishan's expression was as usual as he lightly tapped on the chessboard. Emperor, it's your turn. People who saw this scene for the first time were really surprised. For example, Jingwan, Luo Laoforen, and Luo Jinghua. Sun Yijia, who had moved her seat to sit with Luo Laoforen, was the same as the others. She was used to seeing this and was accustomed to it. It was said that Jin Xinwang was lawless and out of control. Even his old man would stand up for him. Lu Qingdi often flew into a rage. Jingwan originally thought that this matter must have been exaggerated. No matter how much Lu Qingdi indulged his son, he was first the monarch and second the father. How could he tolerate his son's disrespect? However, seeing that Lu Qingdi's undulating chest returned to its original level, continuing to play his chess, drinking his fruit juice, and not adding ice, his anger disappeared so quickly. So magical. Jingwan could be considered to have opened her eyes. Even her three views were slightly refreshed. However, Jingwan didn't know that this was actually the result of the accumulation of time. Li Hongyuan tested Lu Qingdi's bottom line step by step. At least, at the beginning, he absolutely couldn't do it to this extent. He only borrowed Lu Qingdi's guilt and heart to make up for it, moving forward step by step. And Lu Qingdi unknowingly retreated bit by bit. His tolerance became higher and higher, so much so that it became a habit, a behavior pattern that when changed, it would be strange, and other people were also used to it. Even for Lu Qingdi, it was a rare enjoyment. That's right, it was enjoyment. In his eyes, this was a pure father-son relationship without any interest. Even if he was angry, it was also habitual. It came quickly and went quickly. For example, just now, in his understanding, this son's words weren't pleasant to hear, but in essence, he was concerned about his health. This evil thing had angered him more and cared less. When his anger subsided, his heart was still happy. If it was another person, Even if you were careful and careful, deliberating and deliberating, you might be accused of harboring ulterior motives and secretly prying into the health of the dragon body. To put it bluntly, Lu Qingdi was a masochist. So much so that Lu Qingdi's personal attendant was still grateful to Li Hongyuan. As for whether Li Hongyuan was really concerned about Lu Qingdi, perhaps a little bit. If he wasn't worried that something would happen to him and the Luo family would be implicated, even if he ate a lot, Li Hongyuan wouldn't lift his eyelids. Even if he didn't have a maternal family, his wisdom, shrewdness, and skill were not lacking. More importantly, under the eyes of others, he could make so many people swear loyalty to him. Just thinking about it made people feel shudder. It was such a person who wholeheartedly schemed against her own granddaughter. That was like laying down an inescapable net. Even if Wan was smart, she was still a woman in the boudoir. The restriction was too big. How could she break free? Old Madame Luo didn't know if Jin Qin Wang liked her granddaughter more, or if it was because of the obsession caused by the dream. She was afraid that it was the latter. If that was the case, after getting her, the obsession would disappear. At that time, it would be better if he just gave Wan the cold shoulder. She was afraid that he would think that what he did before was not worth it. For a woman, he would go through so much trouble, lose face, and then want to remove the stain of the past. But now, there was no way to retreat. No, it should be said that from the moment he started scheming, there was no way to retreat. Jingwan wanted to sit with old Madame Luo and her brother and sister-in-law. A certain person who never cared about secular etiquette would tell you, let alone a door, there wasn't even a crack in the door. Thus, Jingwan had to bite the bullet and sit opposite Li Hongyuan, the farthest position from him. Lu Qingdi shot a glance at Li Hongyuan. You evil creature, take it easy for lousy. It's fine if you don't have any face, but don't harm. Luo Peishan suddenly coughed. Even if you're the emperor, don't go too far. Everyone is turning a blind eye to it, but you still have to expose it, right? My good granddaughter is being wronged right now, but you still have to peel off her face? Lu Qingdi was a little embarrassed. His old face was completely thrown away by this evil creature. Jingwan felt that this father and son's faces were actually the same. Fortunately, her face was thick enough so she wouldn't be a loss of what to do because of the gazes of a group of people. Wasn't this also because Li Hongyuan stepped on Jingwan's bottom line and took advantage of her in various ways? He knew that Jingwan wasn't an ordinary woman in the boudoir and wouldn't feel humiliated because of this matter. And his reputation was already very bad. As long as he didn't go too far, he wouldn't splash dirty water on Jingwan. Maybe someone would even sympathize with her. Therefore, Li Hongyuan was really such a scheming person. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan didn't do anything else, and his eyes fell on the chessboard. Li Hongyuan's chess skills were not an exaggeration to call him a master. Therefore, after watching for a while, he became disinterested. His eyes fell on Jingwan again. He wanted to pull his wife into his arms and kiss and hug her, but unfortunately, he could only think about it. He glanced around. The Minister of Revenue, who was at the back of the Luo family's carriage, brought his eldest son to the Luo family's residence to join in the fun. In fact, he wanted to make his presence known in front of Lu Qingdi. He probably saw that there was no extra shade in the Luo family's residence at this time, so he probably had to bring all his children and grandchildren. The imperial guards were scattered around. Under the sun, they stood upright. Although Li Hongyuan didn't care about these people, the current commander of the imperial guards was indeed a figure. The imperial guards under him were much better than the previous commander. However, this person was promoted by his father and was very loyal. However, most people had weaknesses that could be exploited, and this person was no exception. However, Li Hongyuan wasn't in a hurry now. It wasn't time yet. The servants of the Luo family gave a bowl of iced mung bean soup to each of the imperial guards. This was the best time to relieve the heat. It wasn't to win people's hearts, but it was better than winning people's hearts. There was always an indescribable kindness and softness in Wan. If she did many things, she would probably win the hearts of the people without having to do them. Accompany me for a walk, Li Hongyuan suddenly said. Jingwan looked at him. Your Highness, can you not always do what you want? It's good to go for a walk. Also, in the wilderness, bring a few more people with you. Just when Jingwan was thinking about how to refuse, Lu Chengdi, who didn't mind too much trouble, spoke first. He made it clear that he wanted to help his son and didn't give anyone a chance to refuse. If you refused, it was equivalent to defying the imperial edict. Moreover, once he spoke, there was no chance for rumors to appear. You know that it's difficult for your son to find his wife, but you don't have to go to this extent, do you? It's such a hot day, and I'm drenched in sweat after walking. What do you think I'm sitting with you, drinking something while you're being fanned by someone? Also, can you play Go seriously? Are you listening to what others are saying while you play Go, or what? The scenery here is not bad, but remember to bring an umbrella, old Madame Luo said. Because of her deep worries, old Madame Luo didn't mind Jingwan interacting with Jinqin Wang before marriage. Feelings were formed through interaction. She hoped that Jingwan would have some understanding of Jinqin Wang and let her understand that the other party wasn't really that bad. For a man, no matter what his mentality was, he should hope that the woman adored and admired him. Compared to being calm and self-restrained, the former would certainly make people happier. It wasn't to deliberately curry favor, but to let Jingwan have a trace of expectation and longing for the future instead of not having any hope in the beginning. She held on to her heart and didn't waver. If that was the case, even if there was a chance, she would miss out on happiness. At the same time, she wanted Jinqin Wang to see the real Jingwan and not be completely affected by the dream. She wanted him to like her more, care more about her, and truly put her in his heart. Perhaps this was also the reason why old Madame Luo easily let Jinqin Wang take Jingwan away last time, even though she knew that Jingwan might be bullied. For Jingwan to have a good future, old Madame Luo was really mentally and physically exhausted sometimes. Li Hanyuan could more or less understand old Madame Luo's thoughts. As a grandmother, to be able to do this much, it was really not an ordinary kind of rare. Moreover, from what he understood, old Madame Luo had actually played the role of a mother. Being raised like a pearl or a treasure, Li Hanyuan found it hard to imagine. In his previous life, when Wanwan had defiled herself in order to get rid of the clan, and later on, when she had fallen into a difficult situation and experienced many hardships, and even died in the end, what kind of state was old Madame Luo in? Li Hanyuan got up. Let's go. In her current state, she wouldn't be bullied. It didn't matter if she just walked. Seeing Li Hanyuan leisurely leave the carriages, Jingwan directly took the paper umbrella from Gong Momo's hands and held it herself as she followed. The servant girls naturally brought some things that could be used and followed closely behind. Behind them were Li Hongyuan's guards. It wasn't a small number of people, but it made Lu Qingdi frown. Zhongqing, take 10 people and follow. Yes, Your Majesty, the commander of the Imperial Guards replied. Then he selected 10 people. Lu Qingdi's care for Li Hanyuan was absolutely something that the other princes could only envy. If they were jealous every time, they would have gone crazy long ago. It would be best if the eyes didn't see, the heart didn't grieve over it. Thus, after hearing Lu Qingdi's words, the princes all lowered their heads to drink the fruit juice in unison, as if it was a supreme delicacy that could attract all of their attention. Unfortunately, they didn't realize their own actions. The people who saw were all silent. To meet such a biased old man, they also sincerely wiped tears for these princes. They didn't say anything and just silently sympathized with them. As they walked further and further away, they were basically out of everyone's sight. Li Hanyuan walked slowly, and Jingwan's speed was definitely not fast. Thus, unless Li Hanyuan stopped himself, Jingwan would only fall behind him at a distance that was neither too close nor too far. Knowing that she did it on purpose, Li Hanyuan couldn't do anything about it. If the mountain didn't come to him, he could only go to the mountain. Li Hanyuan stopped and turned sideways with his hands clasped behind his back, looking straight at Jingwan. Jingwan didn't stop and directly walked in front of Li Hanyuan, casting a shadow on him. Your Highness. Li Hanyuan held out his hand. Jingwan was slightly startled. After a moment of hesitation, she passed the umbrella in her hand to him. After receiving the umbrella, Li Hanyuan turned and continued walking. This time, Jingwan obediently followed him. On the side where he held the umbrella, there was about a fist distance between their arms. However, this distance seemed very intimate to the people behind them, so they unconsciously slowed down to give the two of them some space. Can the carriage still be used? Those good-for-nothings from the Ministry of Works only improved it a little after a few months. Hearing this, it was obvious that those people from the Ministry of Works had been bullied miserably. However, Jingwan probably wouldn't have thought that their misery was entirely caused by her motion sickness when she came to the capital. Your Highness is so kind. The carriage is many times more comfortable than the previous one. You're still not feeling well. Li Hanyuan tilted his head to look at her and said, "What's with this feeling of, you're not feeling well, my heart aches?" Under his deep gaze, Jingwan felt her body go limp and numb. She tried her best to suppress the urge to escape. How could such a good carriage not be comfortable? Your Highness is worrying too much. Li Hanyuan suddenly smiled and lowered his voice. Jiao Jiao is still the most honest in this prince's arms. Jingwan's face turned green and white. Bastard, if I didn't mention that matter, would you be like this? That's why, Jiao Jiao, you could be more honest in front of this prince. Otherwise, Jingwan subconsciously reached out to cover his unbridled eyes that seemed to be looking at her body through her clothes. She gritted her teeth in anger. Your Highness, please leave this subject's face. Li Hanyuan held her hand and saw that she was really angry and hateful. If he continued to tease her, she would probably become angry. At that time, not only would his heart ache, but would also create obstacles for him to pursue his wife. So, he had to stop before going too far. All right, don't be angry. It's this prince's fault. This prince is wrong. Let's not talk about it anymore. Jiao Jiao, calm down. If you apologize just because you wanna, where's your dignity as a prince? Where's your bottom line? Has it been eaten by dogs? However, after he made such a fuss, she really couldn't get up. How did she meet such a fickle man? Her heart was tired. Li Hanyuan kept his word and didn't bring up embarrassing topics. Instead, he casually chatted with Jingwan. He was really quite casual and said whatever came to his mind. And here, they talked about things from all over the world, history, culture, and even some local customs. Gradually, Jingwan became fascinated by the conversation. She even asked questions like, and then, from time to time. Li Hanyuan looked at her sparkling little eyes. After reading so many books and knowing so many things, he actually felt the most accomplished at this moment. He really fell into her hands and would never be able to climb back up. When Jingwan pulled herself out of this situation and looked at Li Hanyuan again, she felt that something was a little wrong. What happened to saying that he was useless except for his appearance? Not to mention that he was very knowledgeable and talented. It was impossible for him to be so comprehensive in such a short time. However, as long as she mentioned something, there was nothing that he didn't know. He could even say that she was most proficient in flowers and trees, and he definitely didn't make it up. Your Highness, you really are not a simple person. Really what? Li Hanyuan asked with a smile, but he didn't seem to expect an answer from her. He looked at the small stream next to them. I won't let you be implicated by me and die in a few years. At least I can protect you for a lifetime of peace and happiness, and I can make the Luo family stand tall for 100 years. Jiao Jiao, how about we go to the other side? Jingwan came back to her senses. She really didn't understand this man at all. When he was bad, she simply wanted to bite him to death. When he was gentle, even someone like her couldn't help but tremble. From time to time, he would say something that would stir her heartstrings, but then he would immediately act as if nothing had happened. Who knew that it was never Li Hanyuan who appeared to be right, but was actually wrong? It was just that when he poured out his heart to her, she wouldn't believe him. Following his gaze, she looked over. Through here, the shallow stream was so clear that one could see the bottom. Large and small stones could be clearly seen. There were also small aquatic creatures that suddenly swayed their bodies, stirring up a small pool of muddy water. The place in front of them just happened to be divided into 2 layers. There were smooth stones on top, and one by one, they were exposed above the water surface. Presumably, someone had placed them there when they passed by. Do you want to go? There was also a forest on the other side. The trees were green and very attractive on this hot day. Okay. Li Hongyuan casually threw away the umbrella in his hand. His long legs stepped into the stream and steadily stepped on the stones. He turned around to help Jingwan. Your Highness, please go first. This subject's daughter can do it on her own. Li Hongyuan just smiled faintly and persistently stretched out his hand. Jingwan shamelessly put her hand in his palm. Because of the weather, her body temperature was a little high, but she didn't feel sweaty. Thank you, Your Highness. I'm your fiancé. Wan, you don't have to be so polite. She restrained herself, but in the end, she didn't say it out loud. Li Hongyuan walked in front and carefully pulled her forward. Originally, one had outstanding martial arts skills, while the other had been exercising all year round. Their steps were very steady. If they had the courage, they could have easily walked over. However, the two of them held hands and walked with difficulty. In the end, they were both concerned about each other. Jingwan couldn't see in front of her. Every step she took, she followed Li Hongyuan's footsteps. Once she stepped a little bit wrong, and there was a bit of moss on the side. She slipped and was about to fall down. Be careful. Li Hongyuan put strength in his hand and quickly turned around. He grabbed Jingwan's waist and naturally fell down. However, the fault was actually less than 2 feet high. With Li Hongyuan's martial arts skills, he wouldn't let the two of them fall into the water in such a sorry state. When his feet submerged in the water, he had already firmly held Jingwan in his arms. Jingwan naturally wrapped her arms around his neck. Her face was close to his, and their breaths could touch. Jingwan slightly blushed. She thought, this guy didn't do it on purpose, did he? As for whether it was on purpose or not, only Li Hongyuan knew. Since his shoes and clothes were wet, he didn't care anymore. He carried Jingwan through the water. The remaining 2/3 of the journey was much faster than the previous 1/3 of the journey. In the depths of the forest, a pair of demon-like eyes stared fixedly at the two of them who were acting intimately. There were several times when she was ready to break free from the shackles of reason and tear the two of them to pieces. The servant girl next to her seemed to be standing calmly, but her hands were faintly trembling, indicating her true emotions. Return. It was only one word, but it was hoarse and unpleasant, as if his throat was broken. He was just in a bad mood and wanted to avoid her for a while. How could he let her see such a scene? He was really treating her like this because of her. He had never taken the initiative to approach the previous few women or cared about them. Now, he was so careful to protect her. Was it because she was his fiancée? Was it because he was moved after the engagement? Who was he trying to fool? Li Hongyuan, you deceived everyone. You schemed against everyone. You even used me. Just for her, right? Good, very good. I want to tear you all to pieces. No, you care so much about her. I want you to see with your own eyes how she is humiliated. I want to make her dirty and lowly. Let's see if you still care about her. However, I should repay you first. It's good if you succeed, but it doesn't matter if you don't succeed. When they reached the shore, he put Jingwan down. There were only a few drops of water splashed on her body, so it was impossible to see. Your Highness, why don't we go back first? It's definitely uncomfortable to wear wet clothes. It's okay. Someone will go back and get clothes for me. How could he be so insensible when he followed him? Let's go. He didn't hesitate and directly took Jingwan's hand. Just as they were leaving, he slightly narrowed his eyes and glanced at a certain place. The grass was green, and there were some wildflowers mixed in. The colors were quite colorful. Walking along the stream, Jingwan broke a branch and played with it. She was a little lost in thought. Jiao, what are you thinking about? Li Hongyuan asked. Your Highness, HM? Actually, this subject is not used to you calling me Chan Jiao. In fact, not being used to it was secondary. The most important thing was that it made her involuntarily think of the origin of this name. It was so embarrassing. Then what do you think I should call you? Jingwan hesitated for a moment. Just call me Jingwan. Okay. Li Hongyuan nodded without hesitation. I'll do whatever you say. How could you not be like this? You haven't told me what you were thinking about just now. Li Hongyuan didn't seem to notice her little struggle. I was just thinking that at this time in the past, I would be running around in Qian Manor, catching fish in the water, picking fruits in the trees, and hunting in the forest. I would be so dirty that I would look like a wild girl. However, grandmother has never restrained me. She said that a girl's happiness was limited to the years before she got married. Therefore, after I learned what I needed to learn, the rest is up to me to do as I please. That kind of carefree days was really something that she missed very much. However, catching fish was actually just for fun. There was no need to bring out the fishing skills from her previous life. Why did you say that? What? Jingwan didn't understand. Why did you tell me this? Don't girls pay attention to chastity, gentleness, and dignity? Jingwan smiled. Your Highness cares a lot. Then what should I do? Your Highness won't dislike me so much, right? Jingwan didn't really care about this point. Even if he said that she was unruly and improper. So what? In the future, even if she didn't act wildly like before, she wasn't a real good girl. She couldn't always wear a disguise. This prince is very happy. She couldn't keep up with his thoughts at all. Jingwan, it's good that you're like this. Even if you marry this prince, you can still be like this. If you don't feel comfortable in the manor, you can go to the manor. You can stay as long as you want and play as you want. Jingwan didn't care. After becoming a princess, how could she be so casual? It was good enough that she could do as she pleased in the manor. Jingwan didn't believe it, and Li Hanyuan didn't emphasize it. At that point, the truth would be revealed. There was a slight movement behind her. Jingwan turned around to take a look. This speed was really fast. Your Highness, change your clothes first. Taking advantage of his slightly loosened hand, Jingwan took back her hand. Li Hanyuan nodded and glanced at her fingertips. He casually found an open space nearby and pulled up a curtain. Without waiting on anyone, Li Hanyuan quickly changed his clothes. Although his back was to her, the slight rustling of clothes made her unexpectedly think of his perfect figure, and she couldn't help blushing. Jingwan patted her face. She was becoming more and more lustful. If it weren't for Jingwan, Li Hanyuan wouldn't use a curtain at all. Even so, it only covered his chest. Therefore, he saw Jingwan's movements and her red ears. However, in this place, this scene was teasing her. She would definitely be angry. The atmosphere was good, and it wouldn't be good if she messed it up. So, she had to pretend that she didn't see anything. After changing his clothes, she gently walked behind Jingwan. It's done. The voice was so close to her ear that she seemed to feel the warmth brushing against her ear. Jingwan was shocked. Li Hanyuan chuckled. You're so timid. Bastard. Was this a problem of being timid? Li Hanyuan touched her face. The scenery is good, and it's shady. Why don't you sit for a while? Jingwan wanted to avoid it, but it was too late. She could only nod. Then, the curtain that Li Hanyuan used to change his clothes was spread on the ground. So, Bai Xiao and the others, who were standing not far away, didn't go forward. Li Hanyuan sat down casually with one leg stretched out and the other bent. One of his elbows was propped up on the ground, and he was half lying down. He pointed at the spot beside him, indicating for Jingwan to sit down. Jingwan sat down, also looking quite casual. She hugged her knees and looked at the slowly flowing stream. In Qian Prefecture, we catch fish in the water and roast it directly. I haven't eaten it for a long time. Isn't it simple? Muin, hurry up and do it. Yes. Jingwan tilted her head and looked at him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. What should we do now? She felt like a demon concubine who was looking for trouble. However, Eunuch Mu seemed to be very enthusiastic and happy that you're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.